All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to STEALTHYHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
You're listening to the Northern Hunter Podcast, home of all things hunting, fishing, and outdoors in Alaska. All right, welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm your host, James Payne, and I'm here with Northern Hunter co-founders Dalton Gray.
Hello.
And Mariah Humphreys.
I'm here.
You are here.
Yes.
All right. So hopefully you guys have been enjoying this somewhat of a series we've been putting on for you guys all about bear baiting here in Alaska. And for anybody that's new listening, I think this is the fourth episode we've done on this subject.
Fourth or fifth.
Or fifth.
Yeah,
we've been going
somewhere
through
in there.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Everything from how to scout it out on your maps, terrain features to look for, how to set it up once you actually get to your location, what scents to use, and everything like that. So if you are new to the show and you're interested in all that information, make sure you backtrack a couple episodes and pick those up. They're a little bit scattered out between some other episodes we were able to do, some really neat interviews with Ryan Lampers and then also Brian Call from Grady.
Yeah.
So make sure you check those episodes out as well. They are really great interviews. And if you would like to support the show and help us continue doing what we're doing, you can definitely check out our sponsors by going to the website Mo designed for us and click on the partners tab there. It's a really pretty design. Again, make sure you send Mo a message on what a good job he did there. So,
Yeah.
but
just go leave a review on the podcast.
yeah, there you go. 5 stars in a review.
Yes,
Right.
there we
And
go.
share this with all your friends. But why don't you tell us a little bit about the people that are on that page?
Yeah, so if you go to our partners page on thenorthernhunter.com, you will find our 5 sponsors that we're working with as of right now, and that is Stealthy Hunter, which is Ryan Lamper's company. They have Stealthy Hunter equipment and Stealthy Hunter nutrition. You can shop items like the rifle cover, the glassing pad, and all their nutritional supplements. And when you go to checkout, you use the discount code The Northern Hunter. That'll get you a discount on your order, and also go shop Yukon River Knives. They have a discount there as well for our listeners. They have a lot of great knives for taking apart game in the field and also processing game once you get it back home. A lot of great options there and good price points, and you get a significant discount there as well. That code is also the Northern Hunter. And again, all these discount codes that we have help support the show greatly. And then last but not least, we also have for our discount codes, Batum 907. If you go over to Batum 907 at all these episodes that we've been talking about bear baiting, all of our scents and lures that we use and attractants, we buy them directly from Batum 907, local Alaska company run by Jess. And she makes the best scents you'll ever turn your nose to. And scents such as Nasty Boar and Sow and Heat Estrus Gel and Anise and Blueberry and Beaver Castor and all the above, she's got it. And at her website, you can use the promo code TNHP and save some money on that order as well. We also work with Weatherby Rifles and Hammer Bullets. No discounts there as of yet. But
that is a heck of a combination.
yes. Those two companies make, in our opinion, the highest quality rifles produced in a factory and the highest quality bullets anywhere you can find. And we'll all be shooting Hammer Bullets this year, shooting those for ourselves and hopefully stacking up the bears with those. So Go check out our sponsors and help support the show with those discount codes.
Now, I wanted to make a quick point because I feel like we're doing a slight disservice because we constantly talk about Ryan Lampers, the rifle cover and the glassing pad.
Yeah.
I think we need to bring more often his trauma pack.
Yeah,
because
his first aid kit.
arguably his first aid kit, the backcountry first aid or backcountry trauma kit,
Something
whatever
like
they
that.
call
Here,
it.
well, I'll
Yeah.
pull it up and
There we
tell
go.
you.
That's why you're the tech guy. But it is by far the best one on the market that I've ever seen
Yeah.
for the intended purpose of hunting.
For the lightweight.
There's no, frills. There's no extra stuff that you don't need. There's no thing you do need that you don't have in there. And if you do have a special situation, as he explained during the interview, there is some flex in the bag, so you can add things that you might not have it in it. I mean, sure, nothing super big. But,
Right.
And then the other thing I wanted to add before we dive into the bear baiting portion is that Dalton and I we recently got our order from Jess.
Yes.
And so we after the last recording of the show, the previous episode, he figured out that the guy was in town. And so we went out there and met him to pick up all of our stuff. And so we're in the parking lot divvying everything out. And it's just having a good time. We're looking at the list, making sure we all got everything. And Jess is awesome, by the way. If you're listening to this, you did a phenomenal job and we really appreciate the organization. But so we're divvying everything out and going through, and the nasty boar. We've talked about nasty boar a lot on this show.
Yeah.
And she sent that up in a sealed off 5-gallon bucket.
Yeah.
And so we divvy out everything else into our individual boxes and we're happy with everything. And then it's like, oh man, now we got to open the nasty boar. So, because all three of us had ordered nasty boar products and it was all in the same bucket. So so we go ahead and crack the lid on that, and Dalton had found some gloves in his truck to use, and I just had like some old game bags in my truck or something. And we cracked that thing open, and just being, I don't know, trying to be manly or something like that, I stuck my face right over the bucket. And I lasted about 3 seconds.
That long?
It burns.
Wow.
It is potent, man. I almost forgot. I mean, I know it's potent, but man, every year it surprises me.
As we were opening that bucket, we actually met up in the parking lot of an unnamed grocery store. And we were out at the end of the parking lot. There was nobody really parked around us. And somebody was walking behind our trucks down to their truck that was parked at the other end of the lot. And this guy walks behind us right as I cracked the nasty boar bucket. He was probably 20 feet away. Immediately.
At least 20 feet away.
He immediately starts coughing and clearing his throat and looking around like, what's this smell? And then he turns around and walks back into the store. And as he walks by again, I was laughing so hard.
Dude, we were dying out there. So it is definitely potent. It will definitely bring the bears in.
Yeah.
So
You know, my dad took a plastic tub, like kind of like a coffee container, but it had a screw top. Like it was a nice heavy duty one, unlike the coffee containers. And he took the thing of nasty boar. I believe it was nasty boar that he took, and he put it in a plastic bag.
Yep.
And he filled the container with spray foam, stuck it inside that spot, made a hole for it with the plastic bag, and then like had a little lid so he could screw it. He'd do it, put it in like, it was like multi-layered in a bag, in this container, in the foam. Like, yeah.
And it still probably stunk on the outside.
Yeah. And he kept it outside. And
Yeah. I've got it outside my house right now in like 5 plastic bags inside a coffee can thing, similar to what you were saying, inside of a tote, like out behind the shed. Because it's not going inside the shed. I can tell you that. I've got other stuff.
Bad news.
Yeah, but it works great. So definitely make sure you go out and get you some. And like Dalton pointed out, use promo code TNHP at checkout and you'll get a nice discount there.
Yes.
Hey guys, if you've listened to the show for any amount of time, you've likely heard Dalton and I go back and forth about bullet construction and how I like rapid expanding bonded core bullets that leave massive wound channels. I've also stated I would never use a monolithic bullet. Well, I'm here to tell you about the company that finally changed my mind. Hammer Bullets produces what I would consider the most premium and best working monolithic bullets on the market today. These bullets are designed so that after penetrating the hide of an animal, the front half of the bullet explodes, shedding its petals and imparting massive damage to the vital areas while retaining the rear shank for maximum penetration. The effectively closing the gap between lead core and monolithic construction. The guys at Hammer designed these bullets with 100% focus on how they perform once they reach their destination. But don't let that fool you. These bullets have amazing VCs and have specialized pressure grooves built in for amazing inherent accuracy. They have a minimum velocity rating of 1,800 feet per second, which allows for long-range shots but have no maximum velocity, making them perfect for every cartridge from your granddaddy's old 30-30 to the high-velocity rounds like the Weatherby 3378 without having to worry about your bullet failing. They've also recently partnered with Weatherby to provide factory ammunition for a multitude of cartridges. To view their expansive selection and find the perfect match for your hunting needs, go to hammerbullets.com to buy yours today and drop the hammer on your next adventure. So to get into the bear baiting stuff, though.
Yeah.
So we ended the last one. Oh, geez, I don't even remember now. But we were talking basically all about setup. You know, what kind of bait to use, what kind of smell goods, how to run scent trails.
I think we kind of ended on scent trails.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
Oh, cameras. That's what it was.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It was cameras.
We had a long discussion about cameras.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, so we covered pretty much everything you need to know up to the setup.
Yep.
And now it's time to do some business.
How do you put up for?
Yeah. So I would think arguably the first thing we should talk about is how long do you let that thing cook before going back in there?
Yeah.
And that is something I think is kind of, one, subjective.
Yeah.
Because it really depends on how established your bait is. If you've been baiting in the same place for 15 years, then one, you probably knew everything we were talking about. But two, you know, the bears are going to be sitting there waiting for you to dump the dog food, basically looking at you, you know, watching the clock.
Exactly.
But if you have a brand new bait, it can really depend on a lot of factors that we talked about in previous episodes, such as wind currents, scent travel, how good of a job you did at presenting your scent, and everything like that. And I would say it's safe to assume 10 days to 2 weeks from the date that you set up
on a new
to
bait?
the date on a brand new bait.
On a brand new bait.
And that's where I'm going. On a brand new bait, unestablished, somebody who's just getting into it. I would say it's probably the best practice to set it up, get everything going. I'm talking everything we've talked about up to this point, and then give it at least 10 days, possibly 2 weeks. 2 weeks could be a lot because the problem is you kind of run into one of three options. You either have bears there that afternoon, which is everybody's dream, right? You go, you set up, you do everything, and the bears just show up. You happen to set up right on top of their den or something like that.
Right.
The next possibility is they show up about a week later.
Yeah.
The scent's been traveling around. They followed it back. They kind of scouted the area out a little bit, and they just come in. And the other option is if you're maybe not in the best area, the highest density area, it can honestly take longer than that.
Yeah.
So don't be discouraged if you go in after 10 days and it hasn't been hit yet.
Right.
That's not entirely uncommon.
Right.
It doesn't mean you don't have good bear activity in the area either. It just means they haven't found it yet. Maybe you need to up your scent trails, as we talked about, and you go farther out, get your scent spread out a little bit more.
Yep.
Make sure you're making it so they come across the trails and can actually follow it back.
Right.
But my recommendation and what I tend to do with newer baits is about 10 days.
Yeah.
I don't think I've pushed it out to that 2 week mark for a while, but if you're only able to do weekends per se and you can't make it out there on the 10-day mark, which would then be a Wednesday or something like that, you know, I would say 2 weeks before 1 week.
So
err on the longer side rather than the shorter side.
Right. So here's my opinion on it, and it's a little bit different than that, and I'll explain why. And it's different for everybody in different areas of the state.
Time of
Very
year.
subjective.
Yeah, and time of year is the biggest thing, and I was going to get to that. So if you're setting up a brand new bait and you're kind of stomping through a little bit of snow, you know, at the end of breakup to go in and set up a bear bait, okay? If you've never had a bait there before, but you know there are going to be bears in the area, then it's usually safe to assume that you need to give it a week or so. To this point, I've only ever had one bear bait that took 2 weeks or so to get bears to it. And that was the one that you and I set up last year, James. That one, I think, it took about...
That took actually longer than that.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was nothing. And then suddenly the floodgates opened.
Yeah. We set that one up at the end of April, and then it got hit by the second week of May.
No, it didn't.
That was 3 weeks.
No, it didn't get hit till June.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, because I went in Memorial Day weekend, and it hadn't been hit yet. And it was the weekend after that I went in, and they'd cleared out 250 pounds of dog food.
Yeah, okay. So that's the only one that I've ever had take that long to get hit. And I don't completely understand why. I didn't realize it was that long. And to be clear for folks, I wasn't just neglecting to go up to go out to any bait.
Dalton doesn't check his bait for 5 weeks.
But I was out of town guiding. And, anyway, so that for the most part and I'm trying to think at every other bear bait that I've ever set up that's a brand new spot, I've had bears there in a week or so. But that's also the earliest I ever set a bear bait out. Usually, in years past, 4 years ago or more now, when I've been setting up bear baits that are brand new, I'm able to get out there in no snow. They're already out and moving. They're already traveling around. And when it's in the snow still, they're not going to cover the ground and go hit baits and hang out like they will once the snow's gone.
Right.
So if you're setting up in the snow, then I would say easily 2 weeks is an easy buffer. I don't recommend that for a lot of people. If you have done your homework, if you're in a good spot, just for the sake of you don't want to lose them once they find it and have them eat it out and be gone, I would say err on the side of being safe and go out there sooner than you think. If you think 2 weeks, then I would go out there by 10 days for sure. I've had probably a half dozen different bear baits that I've had out that get hit with in under a day.
Oh, yeah.
And a couple of my best ones have been hit in under a day. And then I've waited expecting them to not be there. And I've gone out 10 days later and all the food's gone. They haven't been back in 4 days. So they were there for 6 days straight, cleaned the place up, and they're gone.
See, I've never had that lose bears though.
Yeah.
Because once you go out there and you freshen it up, they always come back.
Right. And they do, but then there's another buffer zone where they already left. Then they'll come back through,
Gotcha.
in another several days. But if you go out there in a week and there's nothing, then okay, whatever. You just burn some fuel. It's not the end of the world, right? You just at least go up, you check it.
Depends on the gas prices when this episode comes out.
Right now they're $3.89 a gallon for 87. But anyway, it's my recommendation to go out there a week. If it's a brand new bait and there's snow, then I would say 10 days to 2 weeks. But if you're going out there and there's no snow left, I would say you need to check it every week, just out of prudence.
And I would agree with that. Personally, I'm always nipping at the heel to get out there. So I'm typically setting them up in the snow. And I know a lot of other people are too.
And just to be clear, if you are setting up in the snow, then 2 weeks is plenty fine. That's not a problem. But yeah, that's what I think about it. Mo, what about you?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing. We were setting up early, which I might, if I can, because like I say, nipping at the bud, just can't. It's getting sunny outside. It's warm. I can't stop thinking about bears.
Yeah.
And
for everybody listening, it's May 2nd when we're recording this, and it said 55 in my truck when I was driving up here.
So, I saw 60 degrees today.
Yeah, it's May 2nd. It's still beginning of the week, so end of the week, I'm going to try to head out myself and see if I can find at least find a spot to put one. Even if I don't get it in yet.
I'll be having my baits out this week too before I leave to guide.
And so since I'll be trying to put them out so early, especially some of the ones, your elevation, if you're really low, you're really high, and I can't really say which it's going to be, but kind of judging your area, how late you think breakup's going to hit that spot. Like if there's 2 foot on the snow on the ground and you're going in on snowshoes,
right?
Yeah, 2 weeks, absolutely. But last year I set up a bait I think it was in June. Just kind of threw a bait out in a spot and went and tagged it and then threw it out just to see what would hit it. And I had a bear on the bait in 24 hours.
And in that later season, they're already moving around. They're already looking for food.
Right.
And I've heard a lot of people say, now I've never been patient enough to actually do this. But there's one spot I'm probably going to set out late this year. But I have heard people say they don't even set their baits until they see the dandelions pop.
Right.
And that's because that's what the bears are eating to blow their plug. That's, by that point, for a fact they're out there moving around.
They got to get their digestive system.
And if that's the case, if you are waiting until the dandelions bloom,
then every week.
Then 1 week. Yeah.
For sure.
Right. Because even if they don't hit for 3 weeks, you go out there once a week just to scent it up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then again, they can eat like crazy. It doesn't matter if you had 200 pounds there. If you
Especially early in the year like that.
Right.
If you've got a brand new bait and a bear finds it, it might only be one big boar. Or if it's a sow with a couple of cubs, they will vacuum up 200 pounds of food like it's not even there.
Oh, yeah.
They go through food fast.
Yep.
That's where having a barrel comes in handy, because if you just got all your food sitting on the ground, they have real easy access to just vacuum all that stuff up and it'll be gone. And then, and at that point, if you go out and you set up with no snow, let's say the second week of May, because that's pretty safe. By the second week of May, almost all the snow's gone for the most part. If you're setting up like May 15th, May 15th to May 20th, and you don't check it every week, there is a higher and higher chance the later you go into May that after the snow's gone, that if you set a bait out and they find it right away and you're not back there for 2 weeks, and like I said, they might come in there, clean you out, and then leave. And yes, they'll come back eventually, but they might go find somebody else's bait 10 miles away.
Right.
You don't know how far they're going to go. And so that's why if you're going out after the snow is gone, it's more important to make sure that when you get bears, you can keep them there. So, but it is very situational.
Well, and especially if you're in an area with high concentration of grizzlies.
Yeah.
Because if a grizzly gets on there.
Yep. Give them 2 days and you'll have 200 pounds gone.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. You looked like you were going to say something.
I had something I was going to say and I forgot what it was.
Awkward silence.
So I think that brings us to our next point, which is how often should you check it? And that's once you have bears, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the next logical question.
Sure. Yeah.
So what do you think, James?
Oh, I know what I was going to say. Sorry.
Slingshot.
Yeah, right. I'll clean it all up. You won't know what happened. So when you, boy, okay, I got it. So yeah, before a bear blows,
do you need a Red Bull, buddy?
No, I'm good. All right. Before a bear blows the plug, before its digestive system is going, what a lot of times they'll show up because of the scent. They'll show up, they'll pass through, they might munch on a little bit, and then you'll never see them again all season.
Yeah.
So that's just one thing to keep in mind. Like you might have a bear hit 24 hours after you put it in, especially really early in the season. They're free, but they're just not ready to eat the hard, solid foods you have there.
Are you thinking about like one particular kind of bear, or is this just like any bear that you've had? Like black or grizzly?
I would say black or grizzly, maybe more likely to be black bears, but they can hit the bait early and never see them again just because they're just not ready to eat the solid food yet, and they just move on.
Yet.
Well, so I've had a similar thing happen, but with youngins, like the little ones.
Yeah.
I've had it to where the little ones will come through earlier, and I don't know if that's because they just got kicked or what the cause of that would be. But I've had them come through first, and so I'll get like 2 or 3 really small ones,
right?
And then they disappear, and that's when the big ones come through.
Yeah.
Interesting. I don't think I've ever had that happen with black bears anyway. I had that happen with a grizzly bear one time where I set up a brand new bait and he came in there and clobbered it, and he was there for a day, and he probably ate, I don't know, 50 pounds worth of food.
He ate a bunch.
Yeah, he ate 50 pounds, but then he was gone.
Okay.
And you know, that's an important thing to touch on. I know we didn't have this on the agenda for today, but I just wanted to kind of quickly hit on that. In different parts of the state, grizzly bears are more nomadic than in other parts. In some places, guys have grizzly bears and they can pattern them just like a black bear, and they'll come in on a clock and you can hunt them, and they'll be there a week after they come in for the first time. Other areas, and you'll hear other guys talk about this, but grizzly bears come and they go, and they come and they go. And
random times.
And if you're not there to check the bait the day that they are there or the day after, they'll be there for 2 or 3 days and they're gone. And if you're not there in that window, then you're just going to get pictures of them, and then they might not be there again the rest of the year.
Right.
You know? But that's just an interesting thing just to keep in mind. You know, not every spot where you're going to have grizzly bears, they're going to stay there.
Now, let's dive a little deeper into that since we're just happen to
Okay.
be on this subject, and this is kind of about how to hunt. So if you are walking into your bait, and you guys have had far more experience with this portion of it than I have. I've been fortunate enough to have mostly black bears at my black bear baits.
Yeah, you are fortunate.
But
No, so far.
So far, yeah.
Right, yeah. There's a lot of baiting left.
Oh yeah. I haven't even started this year. But if you do walk into your bait, let's say you give it the 7 to 10 days, or 2 weeks, whatever you're going to give it, right? You
Okay.
walk in there, you check in your cameras your first time.
Brand new bait. Okay.
Brand new bait.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about this in a second, but maybe that time you have some black bears, you come in a second time to check your cameras. Now you've got a grizzly on your bait. What are the behavioral what is the situation like with grizzlies and black bears sharing a bait? Are there, what is your recommendation on how to get the grizzlies off the bait if they are taking over? What's your recommendation on, or how do the black bears behave in relevance to the grizzly bears? Things like that.
Okay.
Dive into detail on that.
So as far as black bears and grizzly bears interacting at a bear bait, I have 3 words. They do not.
Yeah.
If a grizzly bear walks up and there's a black bear on the bait, that black bear is going to get away.
Mm-hmm.
They don't just stand there and eat together. They do not.
Unless it's a mean old black bear.
But they still won't hang out together at the bait.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. One of them is going to leave. If you have a sub-adult grizzly bear and a 15-year-old 7-foot black bear that can kick that grizzly bear's butt, then that might happen.
Right.
I've seen that happen a couple times, not real often. Those are the black bears you want to shoot.
Yeah.
those are the ones that you'll get 80 pounds of meat off of, or more. But when a grizzly bear comes in, he's claiming it. For the time that he's there, you're probably not going to see much activity with the black bears. That's been my experience.
Right.
A few times, last year was a good example. Right at the end of season, we had a grizzly bear come in that it was only in there for a day and a half before someone shot it. When it was there, I have photos on the trail camera. There was those 2 smaller black bears that were hanging out. Pretty sure they were boar and sow. One of them was real rubbed out and mangy looking. They would be on the camera, and then 2 minutes later, I'd have a photo of this grizzly bear, right? And it would come up, and when you'd see a picture of it, it would be like all postured up and like shoulders out, and looking all grizzly like. And so as far as that goes, the grizzly bears will definitely run the black bears off, but the grizzly bears, like I said, they don't always stay.
Right.
And the black bears, like we've mentioned in the last few episodes, they hang out pretty close to that bait, especially if they've been there for a bit. But what you're talking about right at the beginning.
Well, I mean, just any time throughout the baiting period, really.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to say, if it's right off the bat, if you go in there, let's just say 2 weeks after you put it out, it's a brand new bait, and you had black bears a week ago, but then in that 2-week span on week 2, there's a grizzly bear in there. Well, you're likely not going to have a whole lot of pictures of them black bears. And in that event, at a new bait where the black bears haven't had a chance to get established there, that grizzly bear may very well have pushed them away.
Yeah.
And in that event, if that grizzly bear does decide to stick around for a while, I would probably say if you've got a grizzly bear that's hanging out for a week, he's going to be there pretty much for the season.
Okay.
That's been, and Mo and I had this experience at an old bait of ours where we had one black bear that was about the size of a few of the grizzlies that was on this particular bait. But he even was only there once or twice.
He didn't show up for very long.
Yeah, he was there, I think maybe 1 or 2 nights, but he didn't hang out. He was at the bait for a little bit. He wanted it, but there were also like a half dozen other grizzlies working over that bait.
Right.
So they just pretty much pushed him off. Now, there are several different schools of thought on how to deal. Okay, let's just use 20B. That's the unit in the Fairbanks area.
It's a safe one to talk about.
Right, exactly. And so let's say you're baiting in 20B. Right now, you can only shoot grizzly bears over bait in 20B until the end of May. Now, hopefully at some point that will change. it needs to change.
Right.
We have copious amounts of grizzly bears in 20B.
I believe there were several proposals to change that at the meeting this year.
We'll see if any of that goes through. But if you're in 20B and you can only hunt grizzlies over bait till the end of May, you're in a pretty tough spot because those grizzly bears, for the most part that we've experienced over the years at different baits, not even in 20B, that during May, they're off killing moose.
Right.
They're off killing moose calves. That's calving season. And those grizzly bears have other things that they'd rather be doing than sitting at a bait pile. And it's really hard to get them to stay at a bait during that period. So maybe in that time, you'll have some black bear action. But then when June comes, man, the grizzlies just seem to appear out of nowhere. They get active. They get active literally overnight. You'll be overrun with them. And then you're scratching your head wondering, well, I had black bears and now they're gone because I've got grizzly bears here around the clock. What do I do? So one school of thought is that you let the bait go dry for a week, quit feeding them and see if the grizzly bears will leave. Now, that might work. It might just completely, kill your bait. I mean, that's the point.
But at that point, that's where you're at because they're killing your bait anyway.
You're trying to put the reset button into motion.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you let the bait go dry, meaning you don't bring any more food in, you quit scenting it up, and you give it, I don't know, if you let it go dry and then you give it a week, right? And baiting season only goes till the end of June up here in the interior. There's only a few spots in the South Central, really down in 16, I think it is, that you can bait in the fall. But for the most of the state, baiting ends June 30th.
Yeah.
So losing a week, having to push the reset button, 7 days is a lot of time in a basically 6-week season.
Right.
From the middle of May through the end of June, if you have an established bait, that's when you're going to be hunting bears. And a lot of guys, like you mentioned before, a lot of guys don't even start to hunt their baits till the last week of May, even if not the beginning of June. So having to push the reset button for a whole week is a big sacrifice, but if that's where you're at, then that's where you're at. You have to try it.
Sometimes that is what it really does work.
Right. Other guys I know of, I know of one guy in particular, I won't mention his name. He's had that exact issue where in his instance, it was an established bait. He had a lot of black bears over the years, and then all of a sudden one year, he had black bears. Then June 1st hit, and right in that first week of June, he had 2 or 3 different grizz show up, and they were just dominating the bait site, and they were pushing all the black bears off. He thinks one of the grizzlies killed one of the black bears, and which will happen.
Oh, it's not uncommon.
Yeah, it happens a lot. Just not that we see. So what he did is he pushed the reset button. He quit feeding them. He quit bringing in scent, but he went in there to check it every few days still to see when they were going to leave.
Yep.
And he would go in there and sit like he was going to hunt. Opportunistically, obviously, because if a black bear did happen to get brave and show up, he was going to shoot it. But also, he would bring in all of his stuff to hunt, but he would just sit there, and the grizzly bears would come in, and he'd just run them off.
Yeah,
just yell at them and throw sticks at them and try to deter them from his bait. Right. And he said that seemed to work for a while. He let it sit dry for a week. And then he baited it up again, ran a new scent trail, and the grizzlies were right back in there 2 weeks later. So for some reason, the grizzly bears were very heavy in that spot that he was at.
In some parts of the state, they just are.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That there are places that you can bait and try all you want, and you're never going to get a black bear there. You just won't.
Yeah.
So at that point, you just got to find a new spot.
And unfortunately, that's kind of a lesson you can only learn after the fact.
Right. It's trial and error. It absolutely is.
There's some spots where you can talk to people and everybody knows, oh man, there's only grizzlies in there.
Right.
And if that's the case, unless you're trying to go for grizzlies, don't even try it. But otherwise, if you're just happen to be in one of those pockets, the unfortunate thing is you're not even going to know until you got to hit the reset button.
You're going out and setting the bait up in the brush. You don't know what's going to come into that thing. You can have grizzly bears, black bears. You can have moose, wolves, wolverines, lynx, coyotes, fox. I mean, anything's going to come into that.
So one thing, growing up with doing a lot of baiting with my dad, one thing we saw a lot, especially on established baits, and it could happen on a bait that's not even that established, even if it's just a year or two old, is what you'll see is you'll have a bear area with a lot of black bears. You You bait it up. The first year you bait it, nothing but black bears. You kill one. Somebody else kills one. You guys have a great time. You're all excited to do it again the next year. Next year you do it beginning of the year. Once again, black bears. Then a grizzly bear hits. And throughout the year or throughout the season, you'll have black bear, grizzly bear. They kind of play cat and mouse with each other. When a grizzly bear's first hit a bait on an established black bear bait, they don't necessarily just push the black bears off right away.
Right.
Even if it's only a year, or it could even be a new bait. If the black bears have been there for a few weeks, when the grizzly bears hit, a lot of times the black bears will keep coming in. They're just a lot harder to hunt.
They're
a lot more
cautious.
skittish.
They're a lot more skittish.
Yeah. I mean, my first black bear I killed when I was 12 was on a similar bait where the bears were kind of playing cat and mouse. It was grizzly bears and black bears, and I think it was like 1 or 2 black bears and like 9 grizzly bears.
Yeah.
And it took a long time for the bear to come into the bait after we saw it and heard it for the first time. I mean, if I remember right, it was a couple of hours, or at least an hour of circling and coming in. And we mentioned marshmallows the other day and getting it to come in with that, but that's why it was so skittish.
Right.
If you got a bear bait with nothing but black bears, most of the time, while they're very quiet, they'll come right in.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that's something I've seen a lot. And then sometimes it can take a year or two, but then next thing you know, nothing but grizzlies.
Now,
and then you've only got the occasional black bear.
I have a thing that I want to bring up here, and this is a theory that I've told a lot of my close friends, including you guys. And this is a theory about grizzly bears and their population and why certain parts of the state are just all of a sudden seem to have a lot of grizzly bears in them. And I've bounced this off a few different people and gotten some mixed results, but most of the time, they don't see any reason why it wouldn't be true, and I've seen it to be true in some areas. Fire is very prevalent in Alaska. We have forest fires all the time. Alaska has more forest fires than probably any 2 states in the lower 48 combined do on a yearly basis.
You just don't hear about them because they're off in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. And
most of the time.
And
most of the time,
yeah. While they are controlled, there's still millions of acres that get burned every single year.
Yeah.
Now, I have seen firsthand baits that have been set up adjacent to a burn and had nothing but grizzlies on them from the start.
Yep.
And it's just grizzly bear, grizzly bear, grizzly bear. Not even a hint of black bears in there. And I've had other spots where I've had black bears and black bears and black bears for a couple of years. And then a fire rolls through 20 miles away. Okay. Huge fire. And the following year or the year after that, when all that nice willow brush is sprucing up in the springtime, well, let me ask you guys a question. What eats willow and fresh shoots?
I was just going to go into the biology of
moose.
it. Yeah, it's moose. Yeah,
Right.
Moose come in to eat the fresh willows in a burn and all that fresh growth in the springtime because that's going to green up because of the excess sunlight that's in that burn area.
So naturally, around the time that they're going to give birth.
Naturally, if a moose is in there getting all the nutrition out of that feed, what eats the most moose? Now, black bears do kill moose, but not nearly as much as grizzly bears do. Not nearly as much. So a grizzly bear is going to go where the moose are. They're going to follow their nose. And I've seen areas like that adjacent to a burn within 15, 20 miles or so go from being predominantly black bears to nothing but grizzly bears.
That far away, huh?
In the course of a couple of years, it transitions to all grizzly bears. And like we mentioned, at a bait site, they don't coexist. They're jostling for priority.
Right.
The black bears will not come in if there's a grizzly bear there, and the grizzly bears will come in and push all the black bears off when they want to eat.
Yeah.
And when you have a big fire that comes through, I've seen this to be true at many different bait sites. When a big fire rolls through the following spring, all the moose are in there. The grizzly bears come in to kill the moose. They find the bait site. It's theirs.
Well, and then the other part to that too is that bears have an interesting reproductive. I don't know if you'd call it the system or the cycle or whatever it is, but it's a function where you can trace basically the number of cubs and the probability of having twins or triplets or even more sometimes based around the nutrition of the sow at the time.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So if it's a low nutrition area, she's maybe not had the best nutrition throughout the year. She's going to bed a little hungry. During the process of that early stage of hibernation where she's just getting to the gestation period, she can actually control whether or not it's subliminal. I'm not saying she does it consciously,
right.
But it's she can actually control the amount of whether she wants to have it. Like if there are 3 fertilized eggs, she can knock that down to 1 or 2, depending on how much nutrition she has to give them. You know, it's how much the body allows her to do.
I can understand that. Yeah.
And so when you get into these situations with these burns, like you're talking about, where there's the moose are plentiful.
Yeah.
Right.
The moose calves are plentiful. And throughout the year, these grizzly bears hang out there, do their breeding season.
Yeah.
The sows have a lot of nutrition. They're very fat when they go to sleep. They're going to wake up that following spring with 3 cubs.
Yeah.
And they're just going to get more and more and more. And
That's
so
really
you get into these
interesting.
areas where they have, you know, they start off with a certain number of grizzly bear density. Come back 10 years from now, it's going to be a lot more.
Yeah.
As long as they still have that consistent food source.
Yeah, the number, the multiplication factor of all the grizzly bear sows going from having 1 to 2 cubs a year to 2 to 3 cubs a year, that explosion is dramatic.
Yeah,
those are huge increases in numbers. And like you said, if they have great feed, I mean, and the bears eat that kind of stuff too. You know, the bears eat all that fresh shoots and grass and mushrooms and things like that on top of all the moose calves. They're living high.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, that population just explodes. And within 4 years, now you've got 4 times as many grizzly bears as there used to be in there.
Yeah.
The black bears don't have a chance of sticking around in there.
Because the grizzlies are eating them too.
Yeah, the grizzly bears will kill them and run them out.
And for those that don't believe that, look it up on YouTube, on anywhere. Man. There's so many videos of grizzlies hunting black bears.
There's a great video of a guy, I think it was in British Columbia or something. He was driving down some dirt road. And he stops because just up maybe 10 yards off the road, up on this little berm, just inside the trees, there's this monstrous grizzly bear, big old dark grizzly, ripping away at the ground. And there was a black bear sow with a couple of yearling cubs, basketball-sized cubs. And this grizzly bear was just ripping them out of there and eating
I think
them.
I've seen that video.
And I think one of the cubs gets out and runs off, and the grizzly bear runs down and chases it down and starts eating it, and you can hear it bawling away on the camera. And the sow jumps out and just gone, trying to survive. But yeah, it's a vicious life cycle out there. Vicious.
I've seen videos of them treeing black bears, and they'll literally wander off just far enough for the bears to start coming down, and then charge back in.
They'll just hang out.
It's scary stuff.
Yep.
But so with that, if you are successful in getting these grizzlies off your bait, let's just say you hit the reset button and it works, right?
Yeah.
What would you say is the expected time period to get the black bears back? Are they usually waiting right outside the gates? Or are they
I would
gone
say
for a while?
If you set the reset button and rebait that site and scent it up, maybe do a burn, blast some scent way up in the trees. Again, this is mid-season that you're going to be doing this. But because, I let's back up before I go forward here. If this happens, if you have a grizzly bear hit a bait, don't just freak out if you can't hunt it and say, man, it's June 1st. I've got to get this thing out of here. Give it a week or 10 days.
Yeah.
See what the dynamic is. If it's just one grizzly bear, those black bears are very likely to just work around that bear. If you have 5 or 6, then, probably going to be a little bit different situation. But if it's just 1 or 2 bears, give it a little bit of time before you try this reset. That being said, once you do that, if you have to do it, then I would say you can expect bears back in there within a week to 10 days. That's a pretty easy assumption.
There's another thing with that. I mean, sometimes you only get 1 or 2 grizzlies that are passing through an area and happen to find your bait.
Right.
And if all you have is those 1 or 2 grizzlies, while it will make the black bears a lot more skittish,
you
probably won't lose black bears over that.
Yeah, I wouldn't stop baiting because of that.
Yeah. Well, and the nomadic grizzlies seem to be more what the interior produces. It's more if you're hunting around the Fairbanks area, anywhere east, west.
It can depend on the valley you're hunting in.
Right, of course, but
for the most part, when I've had grizzlies at a bait, they're not just out there. There have been a couple, but in recent years, I have not had grizzly bears on my baits personally. And I've had several that come in. I've got one in particular. I've got a black bear bait that I've had running for, I don't know, many, many years. And Many, many years, not meaning 20, but over a half dozen years, I've been baiting the same spot. And a few years ago, I had one grizzly bear come in, and it was there for 3 days. And in that 3-day period, there were black bears working around it. Mm-hmm. And then that grizzly bear was gone, and I haven't had one in there since.
Yeah.
So it's definitely possible to get flukes, but I just because you have one or two, if you've got a half dozen black bears and one or two grizzly bears come in, keep on baiting, and the black bears will probably just learn to live with it.
Yep. To find out how many there are,
yes,
you should be checking your bait.
Yeah.
I would say once you've given it the original kind of cooking time, that's what I call it.
Okay.
The original setup is
soak.
It's soaking, it's cooking. You're getting the bears brought in.
Yeah.
Once you can verify you've been hit,
yeah,
and you've got bears that you're feeding, you should be in there at least twice a week, I would say. If you can verify, especially if there's multiple bears, try to get in there on a Saturday. Try to get in there the following, I don't know, say Wednesday. Even if you're just running after work, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even if you're baiting an hour or two out of town, you can make it up there in a day trip. It's not that hard of a thing to do, and it'll really benefit you because, like you said, you don't want them to eat you out of house and home. Right. Once you get one, that one's going to step in all your smell good stuff, step in the grease, get things on its fur, start spreading more scent trails. It's not going to be long before there's more there.
Yep.
And you really don't want that to go dry, especially if you intend to hunt fairly soon. Like you said, they'll come back. But,
right.
And so I would recommend at least looking at it twice a week. I wouldn't, if you go in and let's say on a Wednesday, you don't see any action, maybe we talked about setting up flags, maybe you're using spruce boughs or anything like that.
Yeah.
If that's still there and you had one show up and it left and never came back and no one else has shown up, I'd back out. I'd maybe do another scent trail, but I wouldn't go in there and mess with that bait because why would you, right? It hasn't been hit. You set it up perfectly. It just hasn't had time to get hit yet.
Yeah.
Add a little bit more smell good spray.
Right.
Make sure you're spraying that beaver castor along all the branches on your way back out.
Stir the stink bucket.
Yeah, maybe stir the stink bucket, but don't worry about doing too much to it. Just let it cook more.
All right, folks, I want to take a second to tell you about a product I found this last year and have absolutely fallen in love with. It's the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. I used one on a recent black-tailed deer hunt in southeast Alaska, and it did a great job of keeping the saltwater and debris out of the action and also protecting the scope on my rifle from getting knocked around and damaged. On top of all that, the carry handle made it easy to transport the rifle to and from the boat during the hunt. When it got wet from rain and ocean spray, I hung it up at camp to dry at night, and it was always dry in 20 minutes or less. Stealthy Hunter also offers a wide variety of nutritional supplements for the outdoorsman, such as CBD oils, essential vitamins, turmeric, and bone broth. In the gear shop, they also have a lightweight first aid kit, glassing pads, and stuff sacks to organize your gear and your pack. Go check out Stealthy Hunter's website and use the code TheNorthernHunter at checkout to get a discount on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
I know we mentioned this, and I think it was the last episode we had about bear baiting, about how much food to put out, and you don't want to put out too much to the point where the stuff on the bottom gets old and not moldy, as desirable.
Yeah.
If it gets rained on a bunch and it just gets wet and soggy, they won't like that as much. Some bears will just, mow it right down and they won't care.
One thing you can do if you're not going to be there for like a week is if you know you can't make it for a week, bring in 200 pounds.
Yeah.
Make multiple trips if you have to. Get a bunch of bait.
So I was gonna say about how often to go in. Once you're hit, even if it's one or two bears, if you're running a barrel, you have to worry about this less. If you're not running a barrel, which you don't have to, I'm going to have probably one bait this year with and one bait without. It doesn't matter. And I know how to run each one accordingly because of that setup. If you're not running a barrel, then you definitely don't want to get that lasagna layer of food on the ground, right? That's going to be stuff that you've got to shovel up and carry out at the end of season.
I'm thinking of lasagna. That sounds good, but then
yeah. This is wet dog food lasagna that will get brick hard by the end of season.
Yeah.
So if you've got a barrel and you've got bears there, I would give them just enough in between intervals that you can be in there to keep them happy. Don't go in there and put in 150 pounds twice a week if you've only got a couple of black bears in there.
Right.
They're not going to eat that much food.
No.
If you've got an open ground bait where you're not using a barrel and you've got, and a lot of this does depend on how many bears you've got. And you're going to have to make this judgment call as you see action in there. You're going to see pretty quickly how much they're going to eat. Now, you also have to take into consideration if they bring some friends to the party, because if you've got 3 bears and then they all bring back boyfriends in the second week of June, and then they bring in their friends, then you've got 9 or 10 bears.
Yeah.
Well, then you're going to go through a lot more dog
party
food.
at Dalton's place.
Right, exactly. So for me personally, I like what James said there about how often to go in. Usually, I shoot for twice a week to be out at a bait. And that's every bait I've got. And that ends up to a lot of work, but my goal is, I like to go in there with bait. Usually I'll carry in 50 pounds on the midweek visit, whether that's a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever.
Right.
It's pre-weekend. And, most people end up sitting on the weekends because you're sitting till 3:00 in the morning a lot of times. And nobody wants to do that. Drive home and go to work an hour later, unless you're Superman, which we've all pulled off. And
I was going to say that just sounds like June,
much to the detriment of our mental capacity, I'm sure. But in an ideal world, you're going to be able to go out on Friday after work, sit most of the night Friday, most of the night Saturday, and even Sunday if you need to. And but during the week, just for a bait check is what I do.
Yep.
I'll go out there Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday with 50 pounds and freshen it up, dump the food, dump the grease. Maybe you sit for a couple hours depending on how far out of town you are. If you can be back home and within a reasonable hour, then maybe you can sit during the midweek and you have plenty of time to do that. And that's great if you can. But then when I go in on the weekend on the hunt times, I'm still bringing another 50-pound bag, and I've got more in the truck in case they've eaten more. So I've always got more than I think I'm going to need at the truck or, but wherever. That way, if I do get in there, let's say Friday night, and I was in there Tuesday and all the bait's gone, you don't want to leave that empty. And I don't just want to leave 50 pounds on it, because if I can only sit Friday night and then I've got to wait till the next midweek to go refuel it, I don't want to just bring in 50 pounds. I'll make a couple of trips and dump a bunch of bait based on what they're eating. So have extra at your vehicle, even if you've got to ride your wheeler back or walk all the way back out, make the sacrifice, take the time. You're already there. Just get it done. So usually Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'll go check it, bring in 50 pounds. Resent it, and that's when I'm really looking at the pattern of it, and then I'm making a decision on when to sit on the weekend. If you have 6 p.m. bears and you want to be in the stand by 4:30 in an ideal world, give that thing plenty of time to settle back down. But then when I'm going back out there again, I'm bringing another 50 pounds, and then over the course of the weekend, if I'm sitting more than one night, based off of what they're eating, I'll add more or not add as much depending on how much they're consuming. Because again, you want to give them just enough bait to almost eat all of it through the week. Almost. Not quite, but almost. That way you minimize your shovel up and carry out on June 30th.
Well, and I was just going to say, and we've talked about this whole you reading my mind thing, and you got to quit doing that. But
there's a reason I don't talk very much in the podcast, like less than you guys do. And it's because most of the time I'm thinking something to say.
Or you're eating.
No, most of the time I'm thinking something to say, and then you guys just say it. So, I'll sit over here and munch on something until...
Right.
We all think alike.
And I was going to say, that's exactly what I started doing as a kind of a hybrid to what Mo was talking about, because one big thing with bear baiting is you got to have the work ethic for it, because it is a lot of work. You got to have the drive for it, but you also got to have the patience for it.
Right.
In my early years of bear baiting, I was not very patient with the bears. And so I would do I would be bringing in 100 pounds at a time, or I'd, get a buddy to come with me and we'd be bringing in 200 pounds.
Right.
Because I could have sworn, this is going to be the week.
Right.
And then you get down there and maybe a little bit's gone,
Yeah.
but not quite as much as you thought.
Not 200 pounds worth.
Right. Or maybe early in the season,
Right.
You were so sure, but then
Yeah.
hadn't been hit yet or something
Yeah.
like that. And then, you look over at your buddy and like, well, I'm not carrying this back
Yeah.
out. And then, so you end up in that situation, like you said, with the lasagna and everything like
Right.
that, because way too much food. And so I like that. I like being prepared
Right.
to bring in 200 pounds if I
always
need
have
to.
extra. Yeah.
But realistically, 45-pound bags, 50-pound bags, if
Yeah.
that's what you've got,
Yeah.
just bring one. Don't
Yeah.
bring a slew. But it goes back to the importance of checking it twice a week.
Yeah.
Is because if you're at least getting eyes on, if you're at least looking at the camera twice a week,
Yeah.
then you really can get a good gauge on
Yeah.
how it's growing, how it's progressing, and how maybe you need to bring a little bit more next time because
Yeah.
you brought
Right.
100 for each bait and they're going through 200 at each bait.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. I agree. No, that's exactly what I do. One other thing that I've done before that we'll just quickly hit on this. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. In the last little bit of season, if you can bait till the middle of June and that's your schedule, then that's great. If you can bait till the end of season, then that's great too. I know a lot of guys, go fishing and whatnot towards the end of June. Whatever your end of season is, when you're starting to get towards the end, if you've got bears that are cleaning you out almost every week and you're just kind of edging the supply of how much bait you have there, what you can do as you go in that last week or so, because you don't want to end up with excess and you don't want to have to clean anything up at the end, right? When you're wrapped up for the year, what I've done before is I'll bring in like a 20 or 30 pound bag and I'll just go in there and then spread that out real thin over the ground at the bait site. Almost like if you spill a bowl of cereal on your kitchen floor.
Make
right?
them graze a little bit.
Right. And then, and then just dump grease all over that. They'll come in and they'll eat it, but they won't be able to just eat it as quickly, right? It's not all in a pile. They can just sit there and stuff their muzzle in there and just chow down. So you kind of make them work for it, and you can kind of stretch your bait out a little bit more that way. That way, again, you can avoid that shoveling up that lasagna and carrying it all out at the end of the year. But,
exactly.
Yeah, just a quick thing I wanted to add there.
Yep. Now, once you've been going in for a couple of weeks and you can actually start to see these bears and see how this is. Yeah. Patterning the bears is the biggest component to the next thing, which is when's the best time to go sit.
Right.
Bears, I think we've talked about this a ton of times before, but bears are all individuals. Some bears like to be a little bit more nocturnal. Some are morning people. Some are not even waking up until noon.
Right.
Just really depends on the bears in your area and the bears that you happen to have hitting that bait at that particular time. And it can change depending on which particular group of bears is there. You might have several different sections or several different kinds of bears hitting your bait all around the clock if you're lucky.
Right.
I mean, you get those noon bears coming in, which is rare but nice.
Yeah, it happens. I've shot a huge black bear at noon before. It's surprised me. I was sweating.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
And I shot it at like literally almost at the stroke of noon. Stupid, but it was great though. I loved it.
I don't really like the noon bears because I do most of my hunting weeknight evenings.
Right, me too. Yeah, because I'm usually trying to make some money at noon.
If you're working a 9 to 5 like we all do, then if you have a noon bear, then you're stuck to hunting him Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, exactly.
Most of the time, what I've found anyway is the grizzly bears are the ones that come in at weird hours, 8 o'clock in the morning, noon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yep.
And like we were saying, grizzly bears most of the time don't pattern on baits. Even if they do come consistently and stay the whole season, they'll come, 8 o'clock in the morning, then they'll come midnight. And then, they don't show up for 3 days, and then they're back at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And then they show up when you're there, when you think the black bear's going to show up. Because the black bear's been there, anywhere from 8 to 10 for the last week, every night. Right? Because that's the way black bears pattern. But
Right.
And arguably, I would say the concept of patterning bears is pretty simple. right? You look at your camera.
Yep.
You get a good enough camera. If you listen to the previous episode of this show,
if you could make it through all that,
you get a good enough camera that actually gives you timestamps, because some of the cheaper ones don't. I think I've told you guys the horror story about my $20 stealth cams that I got.
Yes, you did.
That I was trying to figure out when bears were there based on whether it was a black and white photo or a color photo.
Yeah. And you need to make sure that your date and time is set on your camera.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think an important aspect that people don't really think about ahead of time when it comes to patterning is being able to recognize which bears are which, because some bears aren't patterned, right? Some bears just come around whenever they want. Just like bears have individual personalities, if you learn to look at bears and you learn to notice the features and you get a good enough camera where you can see the features, you can actually start to ID bears.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely,
even give them names if you want to, or numbers if you don't want to be that specific.
I name all of them.
I name all of them too. I just know some people struggle shooting something that has a name, but
Black Bear 1, Black Bear 2.
Yeah, I was going to say, at least find a way to ID them.
Yeah.
But you want to be paying attention to the features of each bear.
Yeah.
Which one has a rub mark maybe on the very top of its right shoulder? Which one maybe has a little nick out of its left ear from a fight, or a scar across its face, something like that.
Or this one has no hair.
Don't shoot that one.
Or
shoot it. Yeah.
Put it out of its misery. Man. But yeah, and being able to ID bears, when people are getting new into bear baiting, it's kind of like when you're new into dogs. Like, you can look at dogs and see individual features if you've been around a lot of dogs, right? You can actually start to see the features between male and female dogs. And I think we've beat that subject to death as far as bears go, but you can definitely figure out which bears are hitting what time.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is an aspect a lot of people need to work on more, because we harp all the time on look at moose, look at caribou, look at sheep, look at all this.
Yeah.
Looking at bears is important too.
Right.
Yeah,
having a bear bait affords you the great opportunity of being selective. And it's a great way to be able to thumb through pictures on your phone at your bait site and look, okay, is this a boar or a sow? Obviously, barring that there's a little fur ball running in behind it that's a cub. It can be really hard to tell. And multiple episodes ago, when we talked about judging bears and boar versus sow, I mentioned black bears are, for the most part, a lot harder to judge boar versus sow. Their features are a lot more compressed, and the differences are a lot less noticeable unless you've got an absolute stud boar black bear. A 5.5 foot boar black bear versus a 5.5 foot black bear sow look really similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Now, with that in mind, the regulation in Alaska for residents is 3 black bears in most units.
Yeah.
And it's no closed season. There's no penalty for shooting a sow as long as it doesn't have cubs. If it's an adult bear, man, just shoot it. It doesn't really matter all that much, especially if you're just a meat hunter. Man, I don't care. If it's an adult bear and it's there when I'm sitting there, it's probably going to get a ride home in the bed of my truck.
As long as it's not, too lanky and young.
Right. But and keeping in mind that we're all hunting for meat, but for the most part, if we get a shot at a mature bear in the 3rd week of May, we've got 3 tags to pile up, man. and in some units, 5.
Yeah.
But that first bear is a sacrificial bear. You can at least guarantee that you get some meat, and it doesn't matter if it's a huge trophy bear. Now, if you shoot 2 of them, then you might want to hold out for a trophy.
Right.
Or if you're shorter on season length and ability to hunt, then maybe, don't be so selective. Or like me, in the last few years, I haven't shot any smaller bears because, been guiding until June. And then when I get home, the last couple of bears that I've shot have been with a bow, and I was really focused on shooting a huge bear. And my last 2 bears were all bigger than the previous, however many I've shot before that.
Right.
My second last bear was the biggest at that point, and then last year was the biggest up till now. But this year, I'm really focused on just trying to put as much bear meat in the freezer as possible because of my schedule this year and what all I've got going on. Now, for scheduling them, like James, you mentioned, you get a good quality trail camera. You set your date and time. I was doing that on all my cameras last night, going through them, checking battery life, making sure that they were on the right settings, on the right delay.
Yeah. Do all that before you're standing at the tree. You're
make sure your SD card reads on your phone.
Yep.
Make sure all of that works before you get out there and check your bait and you have no photos or your SD card was locked or something stupid like that, right? That's all very avoidable. But assuming that you have all that in order and taken care of, you just look at the timestamp. And if you're going in there on a twice a week basis, you have at most 4 days in between. Hopefully, if you're in there on Friday night, Saturday night, and then you go in there Thursday, that still leaves them Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 4 full days.
Yeah.
To get a pattern, and in 4 days you can pretty much tell what schedule they're on. For the most part, black bears are very habitual,
and they build habits very quickly.
Yes, once they find a bait and they're living near there and they're hitting all the time, they're pretty much going to hold to that schedule until a new big guy comes on the block.
Yeah,
when a big boar comes in, he'll rearrange that, and that's why it's important to be in there at least twice a week, in my opinion, if you can, to make sure that you're on that schedule.
Right.
Because, if you get some new bears, it can shuffle all that up.
Well, and once you can hunt a bait, it does not hurt it necessarily to hunt it every night when you've got good bears.
Oh, no, absolutely.
I would almost argue the fact that it helps it.
Well, it helps your chances.
Well, it helps your chances, but it also helps them. We talked about a little bit in the last one about, no, we didn't. Did we touch on it? Oh, we did, about scent.
We touched on it in an episode.
We touched on it, yeah.
I think I talked
about numbing them out to your scent, right?
Right.
So if they're, and we're going to talk about that in detail here in a little bit, but I think the more you're in there, the more they're going to get used to you being there.
Correct.
And so I think arguably it's probably going to help you.
Especially if you're targeting, Al Capone. Your big bear, right? If you're after the kingpin bear at that bait, and let's just assume that this is all black bears, right? Because that's what most guys are bear baiting to kill. For meat, you're targeting black bear. So let's just say black bear baiting. If you've got the big boar that you're after, and you go in there and you have some nights off or some days off of work where you have the time to sit late into the evening hours and you're waiting for that big bear. And in those 3 or 4 nights in a row, he comes in and doesn't want to come into the bait because he smells or sees you, but every other 5.5 footer comes in. Every other bear is getting more and more comfortable. And eventually he's going to get jealous of them sitting in there crunching on old Roy, and he's going to want to come in and fight him off, right?
We need to get sponsored by old Roy.
Good old fashioned. Was it Arkansas company, I think?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I think they started in Arkansas with Walmart. Anyway, but if you're in there multiple nights in a row and those bears get used to you being there without you shooting one of them, they don't care if you're there. They just don't care. In other areas, you might go in there and sit and every bear under the sun walks in. They just don't care. Most of the time they'll notice and they'll kind of pay attention. The farther you are away from pressure, the more comfortable those bears are going to be at that bait because they're not familiar with it. It's not been a part of their life for the majority of the time, right? So,
and even when it has, it's been a little bit more spread out,
right?
But that's a big reason I really recommend people have at least one of your cameras on video, and the reason I like video so much is it doesn't kill your battery. As much as people think it does. It doesn't kill you.
As long as you're careful with it.
Well, I put mine, I forget exactly what mine's set to, but it's 10-second video with like a 1 minute gap in between. So it won't trigger for 1 minute after it's taken a video. And honestly, I've never had a camera go dead on me at my bait.
I've killed camera batteries with too many pictures. So
really?
Depending on the camera, video, like that much.
That's true.
Usually I'll set mine to take a photo every 30 seconds to a minute or so, 30 to 45 seconds. If I have one on video, I have it set to go off like every 5 minutes. I don't need that much video footage. Right. It's pretty sparse.
And I don't remember exactly what my settings are, but it's pretty, it's not taking back-to-back videos, you know.
Exactly.
And again, I only go with 10-second videos. But the big reason I like that, and the big reason I go go with that is because it gives you a lot more information about the bears that are at your bait.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You might be taking just photos and you're going to miss that bear turn around and expose the rub mark on its side.
Yep.
Where you can now ID that bear as Toby.
Scarface.
Sorry for anybody named Toby, but but like, or inversely, you can also get a better idea of their behavior at the bait. Like you had just been talking about with whether you're covered up in young bears or you got the big boy on the block.
Right.
You can tell by their behavior where they rank
right.
in that valley.
Right.
If they are sticking their head in the barrel and then they instantly pull it back out to chew while looking around, and they look behind them and then they put their head back in the barrel and then they pull it right back out. That's not the dominant bear, and he knows there's another one out there.
Yeah.
If you've got a bear that's just laying there and absolutely doesn't give a care in the world about looking around him because he knows nobody's going to...
And he's there for 3 hours at a time.
Exactly. And you can tell by their body language, by their behavior through that video, it might not be as big of a bear as you're looking for, but if it's acting like that, that's the biggest one in the area.
Right.
And at least you know that at that point. You can gauge that. You can figure out some features and figure out how to get that bear.
Yep, I agree.
I was going to say, when you're looking at cameras and camera pictures and everything like that, one thing I really like to look at, and I didn't notice this at first, but when you're looking at pictures of bears and say I've got, a dozen pictures of a black bear, or, even if it's a black bear only bait, I'll have a dozen pictures of a bear, and then there's another bear, maybe not the next frame, but 2 or 3 frames, there's another bear. And then I go back and look at the timestamps, and they'll be a lot of times they'll be minutes apart.
Right. It's almost spooky how they do that.
Because one bear's coming in, they're more of a alpha. They're more of they're a bigger bear. And it moves the bear that's eating off. A lot of times there'll be a sow and cubs. And a few minutes later, boom, there's a boar. Right.
Yep.
And I mean, that's another way to see, who's dominant. And it's also really cool just learning the patterns and seeing how they work. And I've seen that, happen back to back to back 3 or 4 times. Like even where you'll have, say, a sow and cubs, boar comes in, sow and cubs moves off.
Yeah.
And then the boar decides to head out. So sow and cubs come back. And then a different bear comes in and sow and cubs move off. Right. And then at some point, she decides that she's going to chase off that bear because it's, really not that big and she's bigger than he is, right?
Right.
And you'll see that just in pictures, and I've not run video before. I'm going to this year.
Yeah.
I haven't. I'm going to go ahead and do it because
it's game changing, man.
Well, and it used to be just a few years ago, you would kill batteries so quickly.
Right. Yeah.
And just wasn't like, well, it's a lot of time to watch videos. And
I've probably been doing video for at least 3 years now, and I really like it. It's solid.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to STEALTHYHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
I was going to mention one more thing about judging bears at the bait. A really good way of doing this. We touched on it in the last episode or 2 episodes ago about your barricade or barrel setup. Have visual indicators that are in your photo frame with the bears, that if you have different black bears coming in back to back to back like this, you not only can distinguish boar versus sow based off of their facial features and their bodily features, but you can tell if it's just a different bear altogether by the size measured up to something else, whether it's the back of your barricade at your little funnel that you built by your bait, your little brush pile and how high that is. how high the bear's back is in relation to your barrel that's standing upright, how big around the bear is compared to the barrel, all those things. Does his head fit in the hole? How big is the hole in the barrel? You know? All those things will help you determine if that's a different bear or not. And you need to spend some time looking at these different bears and figuring out those characteristics. That way, when one walks in and you're in the stand and you get the jitters, you don't accidentally shoot the wrong one that you're not wanting to kill, right?
Well, and it's the best feeling in the world when a bear walks into your bait and you recognize it.
Yeah.
And you can tell that's my target bear.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Or maybe you can tell that's a new one. I haven't seen that one before.
Right. Yeah.
But
exactly. And I was going to add one more thing. We talked about familiarity with bears at a bear bait and their familiarity with you. Wanted to add one more thing. Well, 3 more things.
Man.
They all have to do with the same subject.
Hang in there, folks.
One of them is their visual in relation to what they see you as. Okay. If you're in there, sitting there in your tree stand with a flannel on, then it's not a bad idea to tack an old flannel shirt that smells like you up on your tree stand.
Or t-shirt or whatever. Yeah.
Something that smells like you and that looks like something foreign, where throughout their week, when they come in, they have to get used to the idea that something smells weird and it's not supposed to be there, but I'm hungry enough. And a day into it, or even 20 minutes into it, of then coming in with that hanging up in the stand and that smell at the bait, they will get accustomed to it so quick, it'll surprise you. To the point where you've got to be vigilant, more vigilant when you go into the bait, because they're going to be familiar with that smell. And you're probably going to be dealing with more bears at that point if they do get used to that smell in the stand, where when you come in, they're just going to stand there and look at you like, come on, where's my food? And they're not going to move off as much.
Right.
That's not necessarily a bad thing, just something to keep an eye on. Second thing is I have done it. I've done another thing of familiarity of smell for them. We mentioned how powerful their noses are. They smell you whether or not you realize it. Okay, I don't care if you use odorless soap, if you don't wear deodorant. If you do everything you can to control your scent, and you have all the greatest scent products out there in the world that are
scent killer spray.
Yeah. but also attractants and lures, they're still going to smell you a little bit through all of that. Bears have incredible sense of smell. What I've done in conjunction with nailing a shirt up in the tree and having that smell like me, I'll also spray bug dope around the bait site.
Yep.
Sometimes I've even put a shot of it right on the bait itself, so that while they're eating away, they're like, man, this
spicy.
Yeah, it's a little spicy. Now, obviously, you don't want to dump a bunch to the point where they don't want to eat it or where it's going to hurt them. I don't know if it would or not. I mean, I wouldn't want to eat it, but usually what I'll do is and I don't mean on the bait. I mean on the barricade or on the barrel. Something where when they come in to eat that food, they're getting that smell heavy right there. And they're getting used to that because all of us smell like bug dope and we all run thermocells.
Yeah.
Now thermocells, some guys will say that they can run bears off. I've never had that happen.
I've never had that happen.
I think that's probably pie in the sky, but they do smell the bug dope for sure. That is a prominent scent along with the smell of your sweat.
Well, and one interesting factor, and I learned this, this was back in high school, but somebody, when we were learning about the difference between like the human scent glands, I guess is what you'd call them, and that of like bloodhounds.
Okay.
You'd use bloodhounds as reference for a comparison to a bear's sense of smell.
Yeah.
Is you could take a bloodhound to a pot of chicken noodle soup. And to us, we just smell the soup. Right.
But they smell everything that's in
We
it.
smell the conglomeration of scents hitting us all at the same time. We can't differentiate, that's the carrots, that's the oregano or whatever you put in chicken noodle soup.
Yeah. Fancy soup.
Yeah, I know, right? But dogs can actually smell each individual ingredient within, even if it's mixed together.
Right.
And so bears with an even more powerful scent,
right,
they're gonna not only smell you, but be able to pick you out from the other scents
They're gonna smell the Old Spice and the Marlboro.
Nice.
Well done.
Yes, that was awesome. But yeah, so just spraying a little bit of bug dope, don't go overboard, but just give your barricade a few shots, maybe spray the top of the barrel. That way they get used to that smell as well.
Mhm.
And the last thing on this list, and I'm probably going to make a few enemies and makes people upset, is
Dun, dun, dun.
Nothing new.
I'm trying to think of the most kosher way to say this, but I'm just going to be blunt. Peeing at a bear bait.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So wait, who doesn't do that?
People, a lot of people bring in a pee bottle, bring in a jug to relieve yourself into. That way you're not peeing at your bait site. Now, I've done this both ways. Now, last year at the bait that you and I ran together, we brought in jugs for that, right? I mean, and I don't know how everybody else is, but I'm bringing in a 1 gallon jug, right? If I'm there between 6 o'clock at night and 6 o'clock in the morning,
that's a lot of Red Bull, people.
I'm going to have a lot of Red Bull in my Nalgene, and I'm going to have a lot of water that I go through. Therefore, I need a large dispensary container.
Mm-hmm.
And I have also had baits where I just, do my business right off the tree stand, off into the ground. And I have not had an adverse effect.
So I'm gonna input my opinion on that.
Okay.
Because I agree with you, but there's a caveat.
Okay.
If you pee at the bait or off your stand early, I'm talking during setup,
Yep.
then you can continue to pee. If you don't pee at the bait during setup and those bears come in and they get used to the way it is, and then suddenly now there's pee.
Yep.
Now you've changed the arena. Right. Now you've changed the smell in the area.
Don't change gears mid-season.
Right. Whatever you start with, that's what it's okay to stay with.
Yep.
And I mean, they don't care about pee smell necessarily. No. I mean, I know a guy that left his pee bottles in the tree stand one late night because he didn't leave till 4 a.m. And he came back and they were all chewed up at the bottom of the tree.
Nasty.
And everything.
That's right. Yeah.
And so they don't necessarily care, but what you're doing, if you're going in to hunt, is now you're changing the scenery, right? Those bears had time to adjust to it, smell it, figure out what it was, chew on it a little bit, and go. Right. But if you're going to pee out of your tree stand, do that when you set the barrel up. Yeah. Go to your tree stand, pee at the base of the tree, and just, then you're set. Right. Then you don't have to worry about it.
I totally agree with you.
But don't change gears.
So
I agree.
We were talking about ways to deter grizzlies. And I didn't bring this up then because it didn't work. But I knew somebody that peed on the bait pile trying to get grizzlies to leave so the black bears would come in.
Like they don't like asparagus or what?
Oh boy.
It didn't work.
Yeah. I can imagine. Yeah.
It didn't work. They just kept eating the bait. I mean, they were there hours later.
You got to think about the stuff they eat, man.
I know, right? But
like, yeah. I'm sure pee's not the worst thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's...
You see most animals, most bears, as soon as they get a moose down, they're ripping into the back half, and then they're also sticking their head right up in the guts, and they're just ripping out intestines.
Yeah.
Right? That ain't nothing new for them.
They don't care.
If anything, it may help. I have no idea.
Yeah. No, and for the first several years, I really tried to quote unquote, heavy on the air quotes, hide my scent.
Yeah.
And you just can't.
Yeah.
Numbing them out to your scent is the best way you can possibly do it.
Right.
Bringing in an old sweaty shirt from the construction site. Like you said, tack it up to the tree.
Not high vis.
Don't put your high vis on there.
Right. So,
but doing the bug dope, the urine, all of that stuff, just getting your smell there and present. That's the way you should go.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly.
Leave a pee bottle in the stand. I mean,
I would, if you're setting up a brand new bait and, you're not worried about it, then if you think it's going to be a problem, then bring a bottle.
Right.
If you don't, then don't worry about it. And I would say you're probably going to be fine. I haven't had a situation yet where it's been a problem for me to just pee right out of the tree stand.
Me either.
That being said, I don't think it's impossible. You could have some bears that have been baited a bunch before. And okay, let's just give this scenario. You're on, let's just say, an old access road that's 10 miles long. And off of that road of 10 miles, there are 4 bear baits, which is far too many for a 10-mile stretch.
You know of, there's actually 6 more.
Nice.
That's the way it goes on those places.
Right. Okay, so let's just say that we have 5 bear baits in a 10-mile stretch. All right, we'll compromise. If you have a bait in there that you are relieving your bladder at your bait site, but the other 4 baits in there are not, and yours is a new bait and theirs are all established, those bears know that might not quite be the right smell to be at a bear bait. And there's a chance that educated bears might know, no, something's not right here.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to steer clear. If you're in a heavily pressured area, the vast majority of bear baiters don't pee out of their tree stand.
Yeah.
I would say that's probably a pretty safe assumption. It's been the folklore and the passed down knowledge from a lot of different guys through the years. Most of the guys that I know that have been bear baiting for a long time all bring a pee bottle. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I've done it for a lot of years, and the last several times I've done it, it has had no effect on the bait at all.
You know what's funny about that is there was actually a study done that proved that human urine was a bear attractant, not a bear deterrent.
I did read that.
Yeah. And that's why when you're camping, you're supposed to set up your latrine area far away from your campsite instead of just peeing right outside your tent.
Well, that and, the smell and walking through it. And
I mean, if you pee off the side of your tent.
Well, you might.
But
I like to camp in
that
puddles,
is a big thing, though, is they say that, if, you should put it not as far away as your food, but, similar concept. You want it farther away from your campsite.
Make sure it's downhill when you've got that floorless tent.
And not into the wind.
I thought with a floorless tent, you didn't even have to go outside.
Right. Oh, boy. Yeah.
But all right. So if we cycle this back, though, so you were talking about bears coming in sequence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how you can watch that. And I will just add a tiny little point to that. It is spooky how on time they are sometimes. When you're able to identify the bear and it shows up between, I'm just going to use 8 p.m. and 8:05 p.m. every single day. I've seen bears come in like they have an alarm clock go off.
Yeah.
It is the spookiest thing in the world. I don't know what caused.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have like some kind of clock out there.
I don't know. It's funny because I grew up bear baiting, right? So I've been watching bears and looking at bears on cameras for as long as I can remember.
Right.
And you say spooky, and I'm thinking, well, that's just what bears do.
Well, right. It's just weird, that it's that close of a time. It's not like a general time of somewhere in this half hour period or something like that. But no, it is. Well,
and sometimes it can be a couple hour variation. Depends on the bear. Depends on, like Dalton said, if a big bear comes in and you've got a mature 6 foot black bear.
Yeah.
And he decides to come in at a certain time. Well, then another smaller bear might vary their time a little bit more, and they may adjust, or they may just, it may be. You may sit there till, say the bear comes in at 8:30 every day, and you sit there and it's 8:30, it's 9, it's 9:30, no bears whatsoever. And, but what also can interrupt that pattern is if they're not used to your scent. It may take them a little longer to hit, and,
exactly.
Best thing you can do is keep sitting.
Now watch this. So Dalton, if you've got one coming in at 8:30, when should you be heading into the bait?
I want to be at
8:15.
8:15.
8:29.
Just looks up. Huh?
If I've got a bear that I know has been hitting the bait at 8:30 every single night for the last few nights, I mean 3 nights or more in a row.
Right.
I want to be sitting in the tree stand by 7:15.
Mm-hmm.
At least just over an hour ahead of time.
Exactly.
Preferably, in an ideal world, 6:30.
Mm-hmm.
The longer ahead of time I can be in there and get situated and get all my stuff done, make all my noise and get up in the stand, get the thermocell running, get my release ready for my bow if you're bow hunting.
Yeah.
Just get situated, the better.
Yep.
And, you have time for things to just reset from when you get in there.
Yeah, the thermocell running thing is actually pretty important because you get that thing going and it can take a good 20, 30 minutes for that to really start to work.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're sitting there trying to smash bugs when that bear comes in, it can be really hard to sit still.
Yeah. I was going to add one more thing off of what Mariah was talking about, you brought it up about bears being spooky when they come into a bait, right? Like they're on time so much. And you guys mentioned earlier about black bears coming in real quiet. That does happen a lot. Black bears tend to just kind of slither in, right?
Just look up into there.
Right. And I've had that happen a lot. However, on a bait where there is a dominant boar and you've got a few average sized bears, let's just say that you have 4 or 5, 5.5 foot bears, and you've got one that you think is pushing 6.5, right? The obvious dominant boar of that bait. When those 5.5 footers come in, and you hear something in the woods just go kapow, that is a smaller bear smashing something. He's breaking something, trying to see if there's a reaction at the bait.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to see if there's another bear already there because he's scared that if he just slithers up, that big bear is going to be sitting there waiting to swat him, right? So, and I've had this happen only with somewhat smaller bears. When it's bigger bears, those are the ones that tend the most to just show up.
Mm-hmm.
They're just there. Or if you've got a bait that doesn't have a huge bear on it, if it's just a bunch of average sized bears, they tend to be a little bit quieter coming in.
Mm-hmm.
But when there is a dominant boar running that bait and you've got a bunch of peasant bears, if you will, that are subject to whatever he wants to do, if he's there, they're not there.
Right.
They will come in and give the impression that I'm a big guy. And they'll break stuff and they'll make some noise. And that, if you're sitting at a bait and it's 10 o'clock at night and you know you're going to have bears there at some point that night, they've been hitting the last few nights consistently, nothing's been there yet, and you've been there since 6, it's now 10 o'clock, it's happy hour, it's quiet, the sun's, low on the horizon or even down a little bit below the horizon, it's starting to cool off, and it's dead quiet, and all you can hear is the night birds and a couple of squirrels going off, and all of a sudden you hear a big tree just crack.
It's Bigfoot.
It's a bear.
Yeah. I know when we first started baiting together, Dalton, when you came back to Alaska with your family and you started going bear baiting with me, we'd be sitting in a stand and all of a sudden we'd hear either a loud kapow or it could have been really distant, just a loud pop. And I'd look at you and say, that's a bear. And you'd be like, yeah, right. Whatever. It's just a noise in the woods. And sure enough, 20 minutes later, there's a bear.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I've heard that several times myself too. And alternatively, the big boars will make noise when they're coming in too.
They definitely can.
And a perfect example, it's not going to be to that extent. It's not going to be breaking things and everything like that. But because they know they're the big dog in the valley, they're not quite as cautious as a lot of the other ones will be. And a perfect example is when you and I were sitting in the stand last year when your big boar came in, and we could hear him making noise and basically walking around quite a bit. And it's because they're basically announcing their presence, right? They're, hey, I'm the big guy. I'm here to eat. You better scoot off if you're around here.
Right.
And so if you're hearing more subtle sounds, that's when you know you've got the big one too. You'll hear, they won't be quite as quiet about their footsteps. They won't be quite as quiet about whether or not, I think we were even hearing him scratch his ear and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. No, he was sitting up in the trees probably 30 yards behind the bait and you could just hear that.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, what is that noise? And then it hit me. I thought, yep, that's a bear sitting there on his rear end, scratching the back of his ear with his back foot.
Because just like a dog. Any smaller bears in the area are going to hear that as well and scoot off.
Well, one thing you're going to notice though, sitting in a stand, what would be a normal sound, like think of your dog eating dog food. Like there's a little crunch there. But if you're on the other side of the garage, you may not even notice it.
Yeah.
You could be 30 yards from a bear in a stand and that bear sits down and starts eating food.
Sounds like he's sitting right in front of you.
Yeah, right under the tree stand. It's just the sounds you hear, you can hear the
They don't chew with their mouth
bear.
closed.
Yeah, that's you can hear you can hear the saliva drip off their lip and land in the leaves, right?
Yeah. Now, I was going to add one more thing about scheduling just before we move on from this and how to pattern bears. This is an important thing to note. If you've got bears that are hitting, let's just say between 9 and 10 o'clock at night, which is a real common time to have bears hitting, black bears, right? They are going to be pretty regular on that, barring, like we already said, another bigger boar or a grizzly bear. If there aren't any other bears coming in, there's also one more thing that can change their pattern, and that's the weather.
Oh, yeah.
Now, this is a very, very valuable thing to take note of. Rain is your enemy.
Secrets?
Rain is your enemy, and it's also your friend. Okay?
Dalton's secret segment.
Yeah, this is a
giving away my secret.
This is a hot tip. Okay, pay attention. Get out your notepad. Mark the time on the podcast. This is a very important thing to note. Bear baiting. Bears will not be at the bait in a heavy rain. They just won't. If it's pouring down rain, they will not be at that bait site. I don't care if they're there every night for 15 days in a row at that bait site. If it's pouring rain that night and you're sitting in that stand, you're just getting wet and you're not even going to see anything.
Now, for reference, you're not talking about a little spring drizzle. You're talking about a thunderstorm.
If it's just like a nice light rain and it's still some patchy sky and it's going to stop any minute, go sit down, because as soon as it stops, there's going to be activity.
Yep.
And that's the other point. When that storm, if you've got a big storm during happy hour, when that storm moves out, you need to be at that bait sitting in that tree, because all those bears are going to hunker up and wait that storm out. And as soon as it breaks, under an hour, the bears are going to be on that bait.
Times I've been, I go to head to a bait and it starts, rainstorm starts. I get to where I park, whether I'm wheeler hunting or walking in, I'll just sit in my truck while the rain, I'll watch a movie, whatever happens, let it rain. And once it starts to die down and I can tell, looks like it's going to clear up, because guess what? I'm just like that bear. I don't want to be out in the rain. No. So I'll wait until
I don't even bring rain gear to a bait most days.
A lot of times I throw like a rain jacket or something real light in my pack. Just
usually,
I do too. Yeah.
Usually I'll just bring just a jacket. A lot of times I'll just bring like that knee length Helly Hansen rubber jacket, and that's all I'll bring.
Yeah. I'm not going to bib up or anything like that for going into the bait, because I mean, realistically, it's going to be like a 10, 15, 20-minute walk. I mean, if you're a half mile, 3/4 mile off whatever trail or road you're baiting off of, it's not going to be that long of a walk. But you do have a lot of that kind of rain that sits on the leaves and on the branches, and baiting is in brushy areas. So it does suck when you get up into your tree stand and you're soaked to the bone, and you're going to have to sit there for a while.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, but again, I think the pants, I mean, your pants don't get that wet.
I don't bother with bringing any rain pants to a bear bait.
Yeah.
If it's that wet, I'm not sitting.
Yeah. No, I agree. Well, because at that point, it's probably the bears aren't going to be out anyways.
Right.
So.
Right. Exactly.
But speaking of being wet and sitting for a long time.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow. What a transition.
Thank you.
I know I probably just ruined it by saying that.
No. I mean, we're new enough. We're still excited about those things.
We're 29 episodes in. We're not new anymore.
Ooh, are we established?
29.
Wow. This is episode 29, isn't it?
29 weeks we've been doing this.
That is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah.
I've been staring across the table at you for 29 weeks.
Well, not this table, because we've come a long way.
Well, not this table, yeah.
Our office has come a long ways from where it was when we started. So.
Once the renovation's done, we'll maybe do a video or something like that for everybody. But yeah, there's a lot of work to do still.
Ongoing renovation.
Yeah.
But anyhow, when you go into your bait, let's say we talked about, if you have a bear coming in at 8:30, you preferably want to be there 2 hours ahead of time, just to let everything settle, let the scent kind of drift.
In an ideal world.
We've also talked about maybe you sit there till 8:30 and the bear doesn't show up. Mm-hmm. How long should you sit after that to either give yourself the best opportunity at maybe a bear that changed its pattern, maybe a new bear's coming in, and when do you just give up?
Right.
Because I'm going to be dead honest with you. I'm way too dumb to quit at just about anything.
Yep. That's how you kill bears.
And so, I am the guy that I'll sit from 6:30 at night till 6:30 the next morning. Mm-hmm. And I've talked about this a little bit on the show too, where having a comfortable tree stand helps with that tremendously.
Absolutely it does.
If you've got that little dinky tiny little stand, you're not going to want to sit for 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours.
Right.
When you've got something you can hang out in, whether it's a hang-on tree stand, a platform like we talked about. I mean, Mo, I know you want to try those saddles out. Maybe that's comfortable enough to be in.
This year, those are expensive, but I want to.
Yeah.
But being comfortable in your stand is very important for those longer sits. And like you said, the longer sits are how you kill bears.
Right.
And that's my take on it.
I just want to point out one quick thing here about going in early before a bear is hitting. Generally speaking, you're fine to go in that hour to hour and a half early.
Yeah.
If you can't get there that early, don't not go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you go in,
that's a good point.
Maybe you can't get out there until 8 or 8:30, and that bear has been in there by 8:30 every single night. Don't not go.
Mm-hmm.
Just go in there prepared. And like I said in a few episodes ago, go in there with a plan. Be fast. Know your strategy when you get in there. Okay, if you're going in with a partner, all right, you pull the SD card, don't touch anything else, carry our bags up into the tree stand. I'm going to dump food, I'm going to dump grease, and I'm going to give a few shots of scent around the bait, and then we're up in the stand.
Yeah.
From time we arrive at the bait site to the time we're in the stand and being quiet is under 5 minutes.
If you go in with a plan and you're quick about it, then you can pull that off just fine.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you won't bump the bear off of there if you're doing that. If he hasn't come in yet, then you won't bump him.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, I know we talked about this initially several episodes ago about how quiet to go into a bear bait, right? If I'm going in at a bear bait and I'm expecting there to be a bear because I'm going in a little bit later than I would like to be, I'm going to go in there super quiet and I'm going to go in there ready to shoot on the ground, right?
Right.
But I just wanted to make sure that people know that if you can't get there, 2 hours ahead of time. Now, the other advantage of getting there early is you might have a bear that comes in early anyway. Maybe that bear will change his schedule. Maybe you get there at 6 or 6:15 and you expect him at 8:30. He might show up an hour early.
Yeah,
But
true.
if you can't get there early, don't let that stop you. Still go sit.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway.
Well, and even if you're not intending to go hunt on the ground, right? I mean, that's what most of us, all of us at this table would do if we know we're going to be showing up at prime time.
Yeah.
But if you're not, I think, and we've covered this too, bears will typically, mostly, sometimes give you the right of way. If you're
Really?
if you're making noise on the way in,
Yeah.
right? If you're going in, let's say it's your first couple of years bear baiting and you're hay bearing it up as you walk in.
Yeah.
Or, like I kind of transitioned, same thing as you with the whistle. And it doesn't have to be anything insane. Just every once in a while, it's kind of
Clarification, not the whistle, just whistling.
just whistling.
Don't blow a whistle. at your bear bait.
Just use a predator call.
Oh, that would work actually.
Yeah,
but
well, it might turn out poorly.
I was going to say that would be for the other side of the spectrum when you're
Right. Right.
But if you just do like a low whistle, just like a as you're
And
walking through,
What if you can't whistle?
then learn. Everybody can whistle.
and even if you
Just
go
depends
in,
on your dedication.
even if you go in and you bump one off, a lot of times they will come back after a
Yeah,
little while.
pretty much
a
all
lot
the
of
time,
times they
yeah.
will.
Yeah. And like you said, especially if you do like a gentle push, like
Mhm.
with whistling or something like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
they're not going to go very far.
Yeah.
If you're hay bearing it up loudly and clapping, then they're probably going to run
Well,
off.
yeah.
And it'll be an hour before you see that bear.
If
But
at all that night.
Yeah.
Or we talked a lot about a lot of this stuff in the first episode we did on spring bear.
Mm.
Or don't alert them that you're there. Be ready.
Right. That's what I was
And,
saying. Yeah. Going ready
Be
to
ready
shoot.
to shoot it. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, especially if you can get yourself a good lane where you can see
Absolutely.
the bait.
Yeah.
Even if you have in a setup where you have to walk up on the bait because the hillside or whatever it is.
I don't advise that.
I don't
sometimes that's all you can do.
Yeah, there's almost always a way not to. But
Anyhow, even if you're in that setup, if you have enough distance to where, even all you need is 30 yards.
mhm.
Right. Yeah.
That's
Well,
enough to walk
and-
in quietly.
And planning, I think we talked about that too. Planning an approach to the bait where you have a visual
Right.
of your flag,
Yeah.
of whatever you left at that barrel to see if there was a bear
Mhm.
there.
Right.
Where at least from a little ways beyond your tree stand, or at least maybe your trail comes in kind of at an angle,
Mhm.
and that was kind of the situation we had last year. Was you
Right.
could just you had to kneel down and look under the trees, but then you could see the barrel and see
Yeah.
if there was something
About 40 or 50 yards away.
there. Right? Yeah, it wasn't.
And in the event that you're coming in during happy hour, when you're expecting bears to be there at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, if
Mhm.
that's all you can do, if you can't get out there earlier and you come in that time and you can see the bait from there, you might be able to just kneel down and there's a bear.
Oh yeah.
Make sure it's not a sow with cubs. You can't
Yeah.
see the cubs yet, but yeah, I mean,
right.
lay the hammer down. No pun
Yeah.
intended, but
Nope. Very literally.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Just send one and shoot that bear.
Yep.
No big deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
speaking of hammers, I was shooting those hammer bullets this last weekend.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Right after we recorded the last episode and was doing real good. Got same zero at 50 and 100 yards with my 45-70. I'm ready to kill some bears.
There you go.
Yeah.
What kind of velocity did you get with those 276s?
Without maxing out, I got what I wanted at 2200
There you
plus.
go.
I'm averaging about 22,
That's out of an
20.
18.5-inch barrel.
And
Cool.
I could probably easily get 23 if I wanted, but I'm
Mhm.
happy with
And
where I'm at.
that's a 45-70 with an
Mhm.
18-inch barrel
Yep.
with a 276 grain bullet.
Yeah.
276
right.
grain bullets, what it's advertised as, they were all running about 273.
Okay.
273 grains.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, I ordered the 300s, so I'm taking those out shooting
Okay.
in a couple of days, and I'm
All
really
right,
interested
okay.
to see.
Low
Okay.
data information on what I
Mhm.
was working up, then let me know.
Yeah, we'll talk after the show.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
But so sitting in the stand, making sure. So once you're walked in, sitting in the stand, kind of circling back to how long to sit. Most people, I would say, tend to quit around that 4-hour mark. I think 4 to 6 hours is really a stretch for most people.
Yeah.
When I talk to them, and I honestly think that's not bad if you have a target bear and you know that your target shows up. You know, you've never seen him there in the morning time. You've never seen him there any other time than between. Even if you had a wide time frame.
Yeah.
He shows up between 8 and 10 every night, or 10 and midnight, or whatever. But man, I can't imagine leaving too early. I mean, if you've got legal shooting light and you're already there and you don't have work in the morning.
So I would say if you have a bunch of bears that are pretty regularly hitting and your activity pretty well drops out at around that midnight mark, which is not too uncommon, it's okay to sit till midnight or 1 o'clock and then call it quits. If you have a lot of activity right up until that midnight or 1 a.m., a lot of times you won't get, this is just off of what I've experienced. A lot of the bear baits that I've run, I haven't had too many morning black bears. And when it's morning time, they're like 10:30, right? It's just odd. The sun's high in the sky. I don't understand why they're there. It's the same bears that hit at night. So I just go sit at night, and I'm not going to sit there even on a Friday night, Saturday morning type of deal. I am not sitting in that tree stand from 6 o'clock Friday night till noon Saturday. It ain't going to happen. I'm going to be asleep in my truck Saturday morning.
Now, I'm not saying don't take breaks or anything, but I had in my early years, I had way too many heartbreak moments where I would call it quits a little bit too early.
Yes.
And then you go back in to check your cameras the next time, and a bear showed up an hour after you left.
Yeah.
Because I've had a surprising number of early morning bears. I'm not talking, 6 to 10. I'm talking like 1 to 2 to 3.
Right.
And that seems to be, especially if you've been chasing, let's say, a bear that shows up at 10 and he doesn't show up.
Right.
There's a high likelihood that the bears that tend to come out a little bit later might start snooping around a little bit more. You might actually get a shot at one of those.
Right. So if you have bears that are coming in at that 1 or 2 a.m. On those baits, if that's a target bear, then I will definitely sit till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Absolutely. If I've got a big bear that's only coming in between 10 and midnight, which is really common, that seems to be the happy medium, is between 9 p.m. and midnight is when I have the most black bear activity. And if that's where my big bears are coming in and I'm targeting only big bears, then I won't sit past 12:30 or 1 a.m. because those bears that are coming in at 2 a.m. that I know are subpar or rubbed or too small or a sow with cubs, I'm not going to bother to sit. However, like what you're saying, if you do have bears that you would like to shoot and they're coming in at 1 or 2 a.m., sit there from 8 or 9 o'clock at night at the latest, preferably 6 or 7, all the way through that 3 or 4 a.m. mark, and give yourself that full window of normal activity to hunt.
Well, so a big reason I basically sit all night, and this is, again, very anecdotal, but
aside from it being therapeutic and fun,
I was just going to say is, one, that's what I love.
Yeah.
I absolutely love just sitting in the woods and listening to the sounds of nature.
We get so little time to do this throughout the year.
Right.
It's the only time we have.
And the wonderful thing about Alaska is there are so many varieties of hunt. You have your mountain hunts, your swamp hunts, your tree stand hunts, your every kind of hunt you can ever want to do, you have here. And so this is the one time of year you get the tree stand hunt, and you just get to sit there and really enjoy it. It's cool usually, even in the heat of June, when you might sweat walking into the bait, but you sit there for an hour or two, you're going to be shivering.
Oh yeah.
You put your jackets on, you're just sitting there, you're on a nice, cool evening. But the other reason is my very first bear I ever saw, I was chasing a bear I'd been patterning, and he didn't show up, and I was pretty bummed about it, but I decided to sit all night. And it was about 5:30 the next morning, I want to say. Hadn't seen a thing all night long. Just dead.
And you sat from when, did you say?
I think I went in at like 9.
Okay.
So 9 to 5:30, I was sitting there.
Wow. Yeah, that's a long sit.
Comfortable tree stands, man.
Even for a comfortable tree stand, that's a long time to be sitting.
I do long sits.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just the way I roll. But
and I do too. But yeah, that's definitely a longer sit.
Yeah. But I figured out, I was like, you know what? The sun's back up. I haven't seen anything all night.
Starting to warm back up.
Yeah. I'm going to just go ahead and boogie out of here. We'll call it a night. I stood up in my tree stand and I went to stretch, and I stretched my arms out like this, and I kind of turned my head to the side, kind of down to the left side, and right like 20 yards away was a bear. Didn't notice me for some reason. I don't know how.
Oh, really?
But it was just munching around in the grass over there off to the side of the bait. And I think it was in the process of circling.
Yeah.
And I look and I see it, and I just like slumped back down into my chair. And I don't know, it really set it in my head. You know, it doesn't hurt to be there longer.
It doesn't.
And you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
I agree.
Even at 5:30 in the morning, I'd been sitting there for 7-8 hours at that point.
Yeah.
No activity all night long. And then suddenly there's a bear 20 yards away from me.
Yeah. Right.
It's like, and it probably was even closer than that, actually. 20 yards is pretty far.
One of the big advantages to the long sits like that, and a lot of this can have to do with the setup of a bait. You know, if you don't get your wind right, if you don't get your sun right, you're silhouetted. If you sit there a long time, bears a lot of times bears kind of know you're there, but they're not really sure where you're at, or, you know, what's going on. Sometimes they know exactly where you're at and what's going on because the setup's poor, and maybe you're not going to change it that year. But way you can solve that when they're not coming in while you're there is by sitting there a long time. Because if you sit there long enough, they'll come in. You know, there was a bait that I was hunted with my dad several years ago, and I didn't kill anything on it, and I don't know if he even did, but it didn't matter how long you sat. It seemed like when you would leave the bait, you know, you go take a nap in your truck for 2 hours and head back in, their bears would be there while you're gone, and then they wouldn't be there. They would not come in while you sat.
Yeah.
And what was interesting was my dad's hunting partner went in there and hunted that bait later, and he sat there. I don't remember what the time was, but it was 12 hours plus. And he got a bear because he sat there so long. So yeah, if your setup's that bad, maybe you should.
I remember that.
Maybe you should. And this was the old uncomfortable stands. I mean, we're talking, you know, the bars with a kind of a piece of padding that's like a pillow that feels good for the first 20 minutes. Yeah. And then it kind of just goes flat, and your butt goes numb, and you've got permanent indentations of the bars in the stand in your rear end. Yeah.
You're stumbling back up to your truck.
I don't know how that. Sorry, Randy, but I don't know how that old man sat in that stand for 12 hours.
and just a quick caveat off of sitting for those long sits. It is okay every once in a while to just slowly stand up and stretch your legs if you need.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
I do that all the time at bear baits.
Absolutely.
But before you stand up, give a 360, look around, just turn your head, be real slow, always be watching. Make sure nothing's sitting there watching you and waiting for you to move because they're like, yeah, that wasn't there last time. Be real slow about it, check it out, and if it's clear and there's nothing standing there watching you and you don't hear anything coming in, then go ahead and stand up, stretch out, stand there for a second, get the blood going back to your feet, and then sit back down.
Now, the way I stay at a bait for a long time, no matter how long I need to stay, is
sleeping.
One of my favorite things to do. I do sleep a little bit at times when I get really tired. I'll let myself nod off. I make sure I'm tied off if I do that.
Absolutely.
But one thing that I love to read,
and
especially since getting married, I haven't had a lot of time to read. You know, I got kids and all that now, and it's just like the beginning of the year, I was like, you know what, I'm going to read a book a week.
Yeah.
And I kept that up for several weeks, and I haven't read a book for a month or so now, or two. Like I started one, and every once in a while I pick it up and read a chapter or so, and it's just really hard.
Yeah,
you know, summer's hit, and I'm up. I get up early. I'm up all day. I'm up late, and you know, on the weekend I have to grab a couple hours to make up for what I didn't get during the week.
Yeah.
But
I read more during bear baiting season than any other time of the year.
I have books that I have bought to read. In the season. One book is coming out, I believe, the 16th of this month, so it'll be out by the time.
I know which one you're talking about.
Are you going to get that one?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you got to start at the beginning of the series.
No.
Anyway, well,
no.
it's
I've seen it. I've seen the video series on Amazon Prime. Yeah, but that's fine.
That's the first book out of 6.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, we're talking about Jack Carr's Terminalist series, folks.
Yeah. Oh, did you hear the episode?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've read all the books. So. Anyhow.
Anyway.
I didn't mean to go off over there, but hey. It's coming out during bait season. I've got it pre-ordered. I've got like the signed copy coming. So it'll come.
Nerd.
Hey, I like his books, all right. Hey, it'll be coming.
I do too, but I don't like them that much.
It'll be coming at
no offense, Jack.
It'll probably get here like third week of May, maybe second week of, fourth week of May, just in time to Bears Night. I've also got the Lions of Savo.
Yeah, that's
I've
read that book in the stand many times. That's a great
book. I do not recommend reading in the stand.
Yeah.
Is Alaska Bear Tales.
Yeah.
I know it sounds like a great idea, and somebody will probably tell you to do it.
Not a good idea.
But if you're not familiar with bears,
yeah,
it's just not a good time to do it. Wait till after bear season, because
you don't want to get out of the tree stand.
You're not going to want to get out of the tree stand. Yeah, you're not going to want to walk into the woods. Like it is. Let's say the people lose very badly in that book.
Yeah. It's not exactly a tale of triumphance over bears.
Yep.
No.
Definitely find some stuff to preoccupy yourself. Having little games on your phone is fine.
One quick point on that is make sure, and this is what annoys me about technology these days, is so many of the games you wouldn't even think need data these days.
Oh, right.
I downloaded a solitaire game that wouldn't play without data.
Yeah.
What do you need data for solitaire?
It's funny because a lot of these things
tracks your score worldwide.
Well, we live in a place.
Right.
We live in a country where, especially in the lower 48, it doesn't really matter where you are. You have some connection, right?
Yeah.
So, there are functionalities and things in these apps that are enabled better, and it works better when you've got some internet. Like, it lets you track scores and keep your score updated and all this kind of stuff on the web.
It's solitaire. I don't care what anybody else's score is.
You don't.
That's why it's called solitaire.
But a lot of people do, so that app has that. So yeah, that's a good idea. Turn your phone into airplane mode and see if the app works.
Right, yeah.
Exactly.
Yep. And honestly, for the longer sits, that's when I really recommend people setting up a blind as well of some sort. And like I said, with my tree stand, I've got the rifle rest around it.
Yeah.
And I'll just tie a little bit of that camo tarping around it, the
burlap
stuff that has all the different leaf patterns kind of cut into it, so it really breaks up the
kind of a
silhouette.
Little skirt around your tree stand.
Yeah, because I've got the 88 foot jumping thing that I do, and so it's like if you are going to be sitting for any kind of extended period of time, you really want to make sure that you can at least flip a page of your book or tap your leg a little bit if you really want to, or maybe wiggle your toes around, something, anything like that. You can pop. I wouldn't recommend popping your fingers, but you can kind of fidget around if you really want to, because you're down behind that blind, and you're not. Now, like you had pointed out with mosquitoes, you don't want to be smacking mosquitoes off your face or anything because they're going to notice that movement. But you can hide your movement. For the longer sits, that makes it a lot more bearable.
So something I really like.
I used to just set up branches around my tree stand before I had a shooting rest, because I would just during setup find a couple branches, and I know I recommended the trapper wire, the baling wire, that kind of stuff. You just wire it up around your tree stand, and you can hang your blind off of that.
Something I really like alongside the books, and like I like to have, I have Sudoku on my phone usually. I really like to just and I can beat my time with that or whatever. And so I'll read for a while, then I'll go to that and I'll read for a while. I have some snacks with me.
Oh yeah,
I've got some sitting right here. Some Haichu. Love Haichu.
Yep.
You can get the ones in the small packages that instead of coming in a bag, it comes in like a little, like the old style bubblegum wrappers, where it's just like in a cardboard package.
Hubba bubba.
And it comes in a little paper piece that's a lot quieter to open up than the plastic ones.
Right.
Now you can take the plastic ones and open them all up and put them in like a quiet Ziploc bag or paper bag, or not paper bag.
No.
I don't know where that came from, but a Ziploc bag, if you're careful with it, can be quiet enough.
Yeah. Well, and the ones that actually have the zipper that you open instead of being the tear open ones, those are even quieter.
Are they?
Yeah, those are real nice. I forget which brand makes them that way, but they don't clip. It doesn't.
It's
snap.
got like a little slider bar.
Yeah, the ones with the slider bar. That's what I've moved to, because you can open up that package of jerky in the truck, and it doesn't sound that loud when you've got the motor and everything else going on. But man, sitting in that tree stand 3 hours in, and you go to open that packet of jerky, it's like
Sounds like
it sounds like a tree just fell down or something like that.
And those bears will hear that.
High chew and a package of Old Trapper beef sticks.
Ooh, that's a good combo.
I can get through a lot of time. Usually I will bring in like some dried fruit in a Ziploc bag. And in that same Ziploc bag, I'll have a few meat sticks, some candy sprinkled in there. I like to bring, if I've planned it out enough ahead of time, sometimes I don't. If I'm thinking about it ahead of time, I'll get one Ziploc bag.
Yeah.
That I can just, as soon as I get up in the stand and I'm getting my stuff laid out, on my Comfort King tree stands, I've got like a big shooter bar hanging over the front of it that I don't even use for shooting off of. But I'll hang my jackets and things over that so that when I get to the point in the night where I've got to put those on, they're already out of my bag. I'm not rifling through anything to get to anything in my bag. And then the next thing I do is I open up my snack bag and set it either on the floor of the platform, or if I've got my bag sitting in between my feet, I'll just set that snack bag on top open so that I don't have to open anything or go through anything to get to whatever I need in the night.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll take out my my insulated leather gloves and my beanie and put that underneath my seat on the platform.
Yeah, even if it's 65, 70 degrees outside when you're doing it.
Right.
40 degrees at 1 a.m. feels awfully cold on a 75 degree day that you come in and you're sweating. By 1 o'clock in the morning, you will need some extra
and you're
clothes.
not building any body heat sitting there.
Right.
There's no
still.
movement.
Right.
That's another reason to keep up on some sugary, even the candy, because that helps your body keep some calorie count up, which helps keep you warm.
I was going to say, my go-to is, I like having jerky in the bait. You know, typically something I can eat a little bit quieter. You don't want that real stiff stuff you got to rip apart, but like the snack sticks and things like that, hunter sticks. I really like the protein bars. I know Gatorade makes some of them that have all the different shapes or all the different flavors and stuff like that.
Like the gel blocks?
No, they're basically candy bars or like granola bars.
Oh, I hate the Gatorade ones.
Really?
Oh,
they're so good.
It's like a Rice Krispie type of a texture.
Basically, they got like 20 grams of protein or something like that in them. But and you got to like the kind, but they have like, I don't know.
There's a bunch of them, but I just don't like
8
the
or
Gatorade
9
ones.
different flavors or something like that. Yeah,
don't get
and that's a
Clif bars.
situation you would want to bring individual bags because they will start to melt on the way in or something like that.
Right.
And you don't want that mixed.
I mean,
the other one I really like is jelly beans.
Yeah.
I take jelly beans with the bait like it's crazy.
Huh, I've never done that.
But yeah, it's
tastes like
good
anise.
Stuff. A lot of them do. Yeah.
Black licorice, if you're using anise.
Black licorice.
Yeah.
So what I'm using to keep all my snacks in this year, this is going to be first thing for me. I've never done this before. I was watching a Bear Grease film, one of the Bear Grease films with Clay Newcomb, and he rides mules, and when he's riding his mules, he's always using this chest rig, which is like a bino harness, but it's not for binos. It's just a zippered pack that goes up on your chest. My wife calls it a fancy fanny pack. Anyhow, and I've got an attachment. I've got a holster under it for my gun, so it's still like it's like a chest mount pistol, but it's right underneath. But it's got tons of room in there. I can fit my binos, my rangefinder, and more stuff in there if I want to. But I'll be able to put my snacks in there. I'll be able to keep my SD cards, my SD card reader, pretty much anything I want. Quick access while I'm in the stand without having to dig through my pack. I'll be able to put in there.
Right.
Only thing I won't be able to put in there is a pee bottle. Right. I could even put a small bottle of water or something in there.
Probably could.
I was going to mention, careful with that dried fruit. Too much of that, and you'll be needing a lot more than a pee bottle.
No, I'm pretty conditioned to eating a lot of food.
Don't do that out of your tree stand.
Spruce needles are not fun. Sorry, that's probably a little bit too much.
Oh boy, we could go so.
This is a good time for a transition.
It is. Yes, it is.
Well, we're kind of talking about gear we like to have in our stand. We kind of naturally transitioned into that.
I did that on purpose, James.
I noticed.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to interrupt you.
I appreciate it.
I was going to let your transition flow.
I interrupt you. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No.
But in that chest rig that you've got, you can carry your SD card reader. You can carry an extra SD card. You can even carry some extra batteries if in the event that your batteries do happen to die for some reason. If you leave your camera on the wrong setting. Yeah. You got binos in there if you want. You can put a rangefinder in there. You can put your phone in there.
My books.
All your quick access stuff. Right. Yeah. Your special edition nerd book you can put in there. But yeah, that's not a bad little system. And it has the Rasco holster adapter on it that you can keep your handgun on that as well. Generally speaking, I do not bring any kind of a chest rig for binos or something like that into the bait. I keep my SD card in a zippered pocket in my pants, and then I have my cell phone in a cargo pocket, a little zippered leg pocket. On my chest, I do have a handgun that I carry in there. Now, I wanted to mention one quick thing about that before we move into gear that we like for the stands. When I carry a handgun into a bear bait, when I get up into the tree stand, I don't really need that anymore on my person. So throughout the night, I know we already mentioned when it gets chilly, you're going to be adding layers. And when you add a coat or a pullover over your chest rig handgun, just take it off, right? You don't want to have to take it off and put it back on, and you're making any noise that it takes to clip and buckle things back on. This year, I'll be running that Gunfighter Zinc with my 10 millimeter in there. And those buckles are not stealthy quiet. They're just not. That's not what they're made to be. They're robust. They're big. They're very strong, and they make a loud click. Now, you can buckle things quietly, contrary to the opinions of most people that just click and the loud echoing noises. And when I hunt with people that just click stuff shut, it just makes me upset because you can be quieter.
Right.
Anyway, but usually what I'll do when I get up into my stand, I have a couple extra tree steps hung on my tree stand tree above me, kind of at shoulder height. I can hang a rifle or a bow there if I need to, and I'll hang my handgun harness chest rig on one of those hooks and just kind of stow that out of the way. You can hang a pack frame there. You can hang your backpack with your goodies in there, whatever you need to do. And so usually I'll just hang up my handgun there just while I'm sitting up in the stand, so that when I do add or take off layers, I don't have to mess with that harness on, off throughout the night.
That's one reason I've always kind of stuck with the hip carry. And these days I'm using that, the Diamond D leather, which is another great Alaskan company. They make the Alaskan Hunter with the drop loop. And it just sits low enough on your leg. It's not a thigh holster, but it just sits low enough that when you sit down, it's kind of out of the way. It's in years past, I'd always used ones that were right on my belt. And typically when you're sitting for a long time like that, it gets uncomfortable. It starts kind of pushing up on your hip a little bit. And so I really like having one that just kind of sits next to my leg.
Right.
That way it's out of the way. If I add layers onto my body, the upper part of my body, I'm not getting in the way of my pistol or anything like that.
So the one thing I would say about that, I've run a leather holster for my 44 on my belt for years, and I got to the point where I would even take that off in the stand because of the leather kind of squeaking and queaking.
Right.
Oh, really?
When I'm sitting down and I move, I hear it. I don't know that it makes any difference, but it annoyed me, so I would just take it off when I got up in the stand.
That's weird. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. I don't know how that little drop leg one will work. I think it'd probably do better if you can just kind of rotate it up a little bit on just off the side of your leg to where it won't rub or make any noise on your stand. But I've had problems with that to where it just kind of creaks and squeaks a little bit. I can't stand that. So
I was going to say, I've used a leather holster pretty much the whole time I've been out in the woods. I've never actually heard it squeak like that. I'm curious if maybe that's a kind of leather or maybe a certain kind of treated leather or something like that.
It definitely could be.
Yeah, because I'm forgetting the brand that my holster in years prior has been.
Galco, probably.
I think it was a Galco. Yeah, but I left it on for the most part. I did start taking it off, like I said, for the reason of it just kind of pushing up on my hip when it was actually on my belt.
Right. You constantly have to adjust.
That is a good thing to think about, though.
Down.
Is anything that makes noise like that, anything that's rubbing, anything that's kind of making a squeaking or a scratching.
I just try to take all that out. And again, you don't have to be. And there'll be a lot of guys that listen to this that are experienced bear baiters, and they'll tell you, man, you can flip pages and you can make noise. You can whisper to your buddies. I don't have a problem whispering, talking to a friend at the bait. That is no big deal.
Right.
The biggest thing is you don't want to talk in your normal tone of voice. You want to whisper quietly, just loud enough that you can hear each other, and large movements.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously, opening up loud bags, that kind of travels a little bit farther. But if you have a jacket that might be a little bit loud that you hear, the bears probably aren't going to pick up on that unless they're really in tune with what's going on. And usually they're not. They're not focused on all those little, tiny little sounds. And like a holster squeaking, like I said, it more annoyed me than I think it was ever going to affect the bears.
Right.
And I shot plenty of bears when I didn't even have time to get that holster off. And it just, they came in quick and I killed them.
One quick thing I'll say about making noise at the bait, and more of a preventative measure than anything else, is whatever you're going to be using at the bait, whether it's your phone to play games or a book to read or anything like that, whatever is keeping your mind busy, pre-plan a placement for that in the moment that you need. Because the last thing you want to do is have that phone sitting on your lap, and then a bear walks in and you lean, and it's maybe your target bear. It's one you've been waiting on.
Yeah.
You forget that your phone's in your lap and you lean forward to get behind the gun or to set up your bow and, draw. And then all of a sudden that phone falls down and clang down at the bottom of your stand.
Have you done this?
No, but I know somebody that has.
Okay. It's always been, it's like ingrained habit in me. I've never done that, but like, it's just ingrained. If I set a book or a phone or something down when I'm in a stand, it's going in a pocket. It's going in the pack.
Right.
Like I used to always try to hang my pack on the tree where I could get to it. And it was always a pain. It always was noisy to get stuff out. And that's why I'm going with the chest rig this year and trying that out. But
so what I started doing with that pack, because I would normally take one of those little hooks, you can use you can get them at Home Depot. They just screw into anything. And I would, similar to a foot peg, for climbing into your tree stand, you could probably use one of those too if that's what
absolutely
you had.
Can.
And I would typically, how I explained putting the blind around my tree stand, I will extend that out to maybe the tree next to me if there's one close, or I'll extend it out on some kind of a branch or something to where I can hang my backpack behind that. That way, when I get into that moment and I got to put my book down or my phone down, I can just slide it right into that pocket. That's really quiet and really slick, and my hand the whole time is behind that, so they're not seeing any movement. They're not seeing anything like that.
I've actually done that before. Oh, I've always set up that way and done that. And actually, with the last bear I killed over bait, I set up my pack ahead of time, and I had a pocket in my pack. I was able to set my phone in my pack and video the kill.
Oh, no kidding.
From that position. Like I'd set it up ahead of time, so I knew where to slip it, so I could hit the video.
Oh, that's cool.
It worked out perfect.
Yeah.
Nice.
Usually I've got like a dry bag sitting in between my feet. Just like a tall tube dry bag, like a Sea to Summit thick rubber dry bag, like a boat bag, something like a 20 liter, just a roll top dry bag. And I'll carry that in with all my stuff on the pack frame. It keeps any grease or bait stuff out of my stuff.
Right.
And that dry bag protects it. And then it just sits at my feet real nice, and it'll stand up straight. No big deal. And if a bear walks in, it's already at my feet. I can just drop my phone right on the top of that dry bag in that open top, and it's quiet, and I just set it there, and then I can commence to shooting. I guess
on that topic, I was going to say, when you're walking into your bait, whether it's a quick camera check, a quick freshen up, whether you're hunting or not, at this point in the game, and this is something I've done, I would highly recommend bringing your pack board regardless.
Absolutely.
Because I harvested a bear last spring where I was not actually planning on hunting that night. It was a Tuesday night after work. I was just going in to check cameras, freshen up a little bit, ended up sitting in the tree stand just to look at pictures on my phone as I was scrolling through. I looked down, and right below my tree stand, there was a bear. And of course, you don't see a legal bear and not take it home with you. So on a Tuesday night, not planning on hunting, not anything like that, I put a hole in that bear, and I ended up having to take it out with no pack board, no nothing. I didn't even have the pack board on my wheeler.
Really?
And so every single time, even if you only plan on being there for 30 minutes,
even
bring in your pack board.
So one thing, even if you're hiking in quarter mile, like you're just right at that minimum quarter mile, you've got your truck on the side of the road. You may not take the pack board into the bait at that point, right? You may hunt, do everything. You just don't want it with you. You got your small day pack, but then at least you kill a bear, right?
You can go get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's not very far. It's a quick trip. You can go get it. Especially, a lot of times when you're road hunting like that, you'll be road hunting one bait and your buddy's road hunting another bait, and you dropped him off, or vice versa.
Yeah.
So when he comes, you can go out to the side of the road, leave a flag, so he knows when he comes back by your truck that he killed a bear. Maybe I should go help him. Right?
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. Yep.
But just be prepared to hunt every time you go in. Don't get complacent. Don't get in a hurry. Just be prepared to hunt.
So I think we should go around the room and see what each of our favorite things to bring in to the stand are as far as gear things? I know we've each kind of mentioned some things, but while on the subject of gear, what are some things that we haven't probably talked about yet that each of us likes to bring into the bait site?
Well, I know we've talked about the thermocell, and that's kind of that is a gear item.
Yeah, it is.
That's like, if you don't have anything else.
Go into detail for anybody that maybe isn't living in Alaska, and because every Alaskan knows what a thermosol is.
Yeah.
Well,
but we have a lot of listeners outside.
You'd be surprised. You would be surprised.
You can buy them at sports. They have they keep coming out with different options of it every year. But the good old standard thermocell, it's like 6-8 inches tall.
Yeah.
And it's got a little card that has a scent.
It's like an 1.5 by 1.5. It's real small.
1.5 by 2 inches, I think.
Something like that.
You kind of slip it in the front. There's a little grill. And there's a little burner in there, and it burns butane. You can buy the cards for it. You can buy the bottles for it, or the thermocell. You slip them into it, and you start it up in 20-30 minutes. Usually, bugs. You'll start watching mosquitoes fly towards you, turn around, and fly away.
Little pro tip. Yeah. I always get mine starting burning before I walk in.
I always do it when I get in the stand, but that is a great idea.
Usually I start it when I leave the truck.
Yeah. So I'm going to attempt, and I don't know how well it's going to work.
Or the four-wheeler,
right.
Yeah.
I'm going to attempt. I don't know how well it's going to work, but I'm going to attempt, because they make a harness, like a holster for the thermocell. I'm going to try putting it next to my chest rig. Now, I don't want to burn myself on the grill.
Those cheap little clips that they come with do not stay
Not the clips.
No, they don't.
No, they make like an actual full covering holster for the thermocell with a strap.
I know what you're talking about.
I don't know how well it's going to work, if it's going to flop around, if it's going to be in my way. But I'm going to try it for hiking in.
I don't necessarily like it being that close to my face, to be honest with you, because it does put off a small but steady smoke stream, basically. Once that wafer gets to burning.
So I don't think I'll normally smoke.
Well, not smoke, but it looks like smoke. It acts like smoke. Quacks like a duck, looks like a duck.
Right.
But
keeps the bugs away.
Yeah, it keeps the bugs away.
I don't really care what it's made of. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll normally keep it in my backpack, like in just one of those side pouches. That's as I have it burning while I'm walking in. And then once I get to the stand, I'll just put it between my feet.
Right.
Yeah.
Under the seat or
I don't know if I'd want it right up on my chest or not.
Yeah, I don't think I would.
I mean, it would definitely keep the bugs out of your face.
You used to be able to buy them for like $25. They're probably not that anymore.
Yeah.
For one, it's probably like 30 or 35, but it is, if you can't buy, if you can't bring snacks in the stand, you can only buy a thermocell. Bring a thermocell. Whatever you. Yeah.
Because otherwise, you'll be the snack.
Right. Right.
Thermocell is make or break.
Yes.
It's terrible without them.
Well, if you don't have a thermocell, bug net, be fully covered up, gloves, or else. Yeah.
I recommend thermocell, but
I know a guy that wears a full face bug net and practices shooting while wearing it, because he doesn't want to have to worry about taking it off.
Oh yeah,
but
absolutely.
That's his solution.
Yeah, I've shot bears with a bug net on before. Absolutely. I would say favorite things to have in the stand. I know I already mentioned it before, but having some layers. On that note, going to a bit more detail about that, I like bringing in wool to the bait.
Yeah,
it's quiet. If you do happen to get a little drizzle on you while you're in the bait site, and you're not going to leave if it's not going to stick around too long, and you're going to get a little bit damp, wool remains warm when it's wet. It does get heavy. If it's raining that much, then it's probably time to pack up and go anyway, unless you know it's going to leave.
Right.
Then slip your raincoat on. But if it's just a light little drizzle and you're sitting in a stand underneath a tree, if you got those branches over top of you, you're not going to get that wet, and wool does remain warm. I like going into a bait with like a merino wool thin top on that I can spray a bunch of bug dope on. Keeps the bugs off your skin. You don't sweat it off like you do if you're going in short sleeves. So like a long sleeve merino wool shirt or a long sleeve merino wool half zip hoodie.
Right.
Pretty much every company out there in the hunting industry has that as an option. Sitka, First Light, Kuiu, Stone Glacier, they all have that. They also, Mountain Ops, they all have hoodies like that. They're, $125 for something like that. I like to go in with that. It's bug protection. It's also a little light insulating layer. And then when I get up in the stand, I'm going to be cooling off, right? You want to try to let that sweat evaporate. Don't layer up right away, expecting to be there all night. Don't put all your layers on right away, expecting to get cold later. Let yourself kind of dry off a little bit. Let that layer wick the sweat away and kind of evaporate before you layer up. On top of that, I've got a half zip. It's made by Asbel Wool. ASBELL. It's a company that G. Fred Asbell, he's an old traditional bow hunter. He actually just died this spring, actually. But he had a wool coat and pullover business going on. And it's a nice heavyweight wool pullover. It's similar to like the old Cabela's Woltimate hoodie that I think they stopped making. I might be wrong. They might still make it, but it's real similar to that in its material. Pretty heavy duty, but it's quiet. And it's really, really warm for what it is. It's got a hood on it, so you can pull that up if you need to. Generally, I don't put a hood up at the bait. It kind of restricts my visibility, and it kind of dampens my hearing a little bit.
Yeah, the hearing's the big one for me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'll throw that on this year. That's what I'm bringing this year since I've got that. I got it for like a Christmas present or something. And then over top of that, when it gets real chilly, I'll throw on. I years ago with Mo at a garage sale, I came across 2 Cabela's wool jackets, and they're button up. They don't have a hood on them, and they're just button up. They're like a Woolrich, but they're Cabela's brand wool jackets. And one of them is just like a green, generic green camo pattern. It's nothing fancy. And that thing is heavy. Like I'll wear that in the wintertime, but I'll bring that to the bear bait to put over that heavy wool pullover, and then I'm set. That's basically all I need to sit pretty much all night. Now, it is a little bit scratchy. Sometimes I'll bring in a heavier weight hoodie to put over my merino hoodie just to keep that wool from being scratchy up against my skin. But that's pretty much what I bring in for layers. I really like wool for that. Another great option would be Stone Glacier has their, I'm trying to think of the name of it. Is it the Zenith fleece jacket? Is that the right name for that fleece? But anyway, it's just a generic fleece zip up jacket. There's no hood on it. It's real quiet. It's warm. Again, you're just looking for something quiet with good mobility in it to shoot a bow. And if you're going to be wearing all these layers at the bait and you're archery hunting, make sure that you can draw and shoot your bow with that big wool pullover on or whatever else you've got on for a layer. Don't just practice shooting in your t-shirt or your long sleeve shirt at your house in your yard. Put on those real warm layers, even if it's a hot afternoon, and make a few shots with that and simulate, shoot off your deck from a picnic chair as if you're sitting in a stand and make sure that you have good mobility and that none of your sleeves or your chest of that jacket gets in the way of your string travel.
Yep.
That's a hot tip for me as far as layering goes. I really like wool at a bait site. It's quiet and it's warm.
Yeah. No, and that's good. And that's, I pretty much always have my flannel on when I'm up there.
Yeah.
Because you don't need camo really. I mean,
it's not hard.
It's
solid color pants and a wool top, whatever it is. That Asbell wool pullover is just like a gray, green, black plaid pattern. It'll work great.
Well, and the thing with a lot of these hunting clothing lines is that you don't realize quite how loud they are. And just like with the snack packets and the wrappers and everything like that, like I said, I mean, even those little protein bars, you want to take them out of that little foil wrapper because that's going to be like a subwoofer going off in the woods, right? But you don't realize as you're walking around just how loud some of these clothing
puffy
items
gear
are. Puffy
gear is extremely loud.
Carhartts, if you're going to wear your Carhartt in.
A lot of, and just on that note, just what you just said, a lot of this mountain hunting brand type stuff, a lot of the stuff from Kuiu, Stone Glacier, Sitka, it's great on a mountain hunt where you're not going to be inside that 100-yard mark, or really where it matters is inside 50. Bow hunters know they don't wear super loud clothing when they're hunting. Rifle hunters that hunt in the mountains or even in an area where they don't have to be super quiet as far as their clothing goes, because they're going to be taking shots at over 100 yards routinely, right? That's not the case at a bear bait. You're in a very compressed, very quiet environment, and you need the clothing to do that. And a lot of that mountain type clothing that's ultra lightweight is made with fabrics, face fabrics in particular, even a soft shell jacket with that DWR hard shell finish, not hard shell, soft shell finish is a lot louder than you might think driving around town and walking through the grocery store with it. That's not stuff that you generally want to wear at a bear bait if you can help it. But yeah, even just a cheap flannel shirt from a I don't know, like a Big Rays or something like that, or a Prospectors, a couple of stores that we have in town that are like workwear supply companies. Just get like a flannel shirt with earth tone colors, red and black, green and black, gray and black, or just, brown, whatever it is. Something that's not going to stick out, but that's quiet. That's what you're looking for, is quiet and warm.
Yeah. Nope, I agree.
I would say it's not really a gear item, but with your phone, we talked a lot about, using your phone, whether you use it to keep yourself occupied or you put books on your phone, right?
Yeah, I do.
I usually have a book, a real copy of a book, and then backup books on my phone, depending on how long I'm sitting.
Nerd.
Anyhow,
sorry.
The advantage of reading a book on your phone is it's quiet. It's very quiet.
Yeah, I agree. It also kills your battery, but
reading books on the phone is one of the most battery friendly things you.
Yeah, but when you're going back and forth between Candy Crush and books for 10 hours, it kills your battery.
This is what I was going to say. It's not necessarily a gear item unless you want to bring a battery pack, but charge your phone on your drive to your bait. Because if you don't, and you just got off work and you drive to your bait and you get in your stand, you got 10%, you ain't reading a book.
Usually I'll bring one of my battery banks in with me. I actually got in the mail a couple weeks ago here for guide season. I got some of those Dark Energy Poseidon Pro battery chargers, and you just bring in a cord and a charger like that. They don't weigh enough to not bring them.
No. I mean, it's a bear bait. It's not like you're trying to be ultra light.
Yeah. I mean, I've already got 100 plus pounds of junk I'm carrying in for the bait on top of my stuff. So yeah, if I can avoid carrying in a 3-pound big bank, then I'm going to.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I'm not packing in solar panels or nothing like that.
I mean, I guess if you're there for the long haul in your tree stand or in your tree fort style,
you're glamping.
There you go.
Yeah, if you're just going to stay there for like 3 days, then you could set up some solar panels.
I know people that have done that, chasing one particular bear. Yeah,
up in a big platform stand.
Yeah.
Just
the
bring
guy's nuts.
Just bring a sleeping bag and just hang out. Let them wake you up from their chewing.
Yeah. As far as me and what I bring in the stand, man, I'm a very simple guy.
Yeah.
I live a very simple life. It doesn't take a whole lot to make me happy. And that kind of goes for my bear baiting style too. I'm just pretty much everything we've already talked about is just all I carry with me.
Yeah.
I carry warm clothes because two things that do make me very happy is being warm and dry. I carry a thermocell. Thermocell is huge for me. Right. I will go in there with that. And then just snacks to keep me munching and a little something to keep me entertained. Like Mo said, I'll usually bring a book.
Yeah.
I don't really read a whole lot of, I would say novel style books, but typically I'll bring either my reloading manual or my Bible, one of those two, depending on, which side of me needs more work at that particular moment in time. I like to kind of preemptively nerd out in my own way. If I'm, I have my phone with me. I don't typically like to be on my phone that much. If I'm on my phone, I'm either playing solitaire or I'm scouting on its maps. I will sit there, and one thing I love to do is I will sit there and just play around on the maps, look at, I'll have pre-downloaded areas. We talked about downloading areas on your maps and stuff like that. So I'll download a couple areas that I really want to investigate, but maybe I haven't had time to. While you're sitting in the tree stand, is the perfect time. You can go in there and just follow all those little trails you can see. You can, zoom in and out and figure out maybe you're pre-planning for a next season or something like that. And I'll just sit there, and that keeps me entertained. But, as long as I'm warm, entertained, and have a little bit of something to snack on, I can sit indefinitely, man. I mean,
for sure.
The one thing I will say, actually, I guess, is I learned this lesson last year because as I'm getting older, apparently my body's changing and I am allergic to things I did not previously have to worry about being allergic to. I don't know what it is yet. I'll probably figure it out this spring. But last spring, I had a really, really bad bout of allergies that lasted a long time through the baiting season.
Some of that pollen in the brush.
Something, I've never had allergies up until last spring.
So tip on that, James, pro tip. Find somebody with raw honey that sells raw honey from bees, and and just like take a spoonful of that every morning.
Yeah, microdose the pollen.
Right.
Yeah.
That will actually. I've my parents have bee. My dad runs bees, and he's had people that take the honey, and it has
hook a brother up.
You'll have to talk to them. I don't know if they have any left or not to sell, but he has multiple stories of people taking honey, and because of everything that's in it. It just being from going from not being able to walk outside after his wife cut the grass because he couldn't do it.
Right.
You know, he to being able to go out and just take a big breath of fresh air and cut the grass and not have an issue.
Yeah. Well, and that's apparently something I have to worry about now that I'm getting into my old age. But
so it's basically a safe vaccine.
No, it's not.
There are no safe vaccines.
I'm just kidding.
But no, so my piece of advice there is just figure out what works for you to manage those symptoms of that allergy before you get out there, because there were a couple of times last year, which is what prompted me to do this, where I thought, man, I'm not allergic to anything. It must just be like a little cold or something like that. And as soon as I get out in the woods, I'll be fine. As soon as I get out and I'm sitting there, it'll be fine. Well, it got amplified when I was sitting out there. So whatever I'm allergic to is out there. But
sitting in a birch tree, were you?
Something. But, and I was sitting there and you're trying to be quiet and you're trying to not move a whole lot. And you're sniffling and trying not to cough. I was coughing like crazy and you're just sitting there. And I don't know how many people listening have tried to hold in a cough for hours, but it is painful, extremely painful.
Just stick your face in that wool coat and let it go.
Yeah, and eventually you just have to. There's no holding it back after that long.
We've all been there.
Yeah, and so, figure out, and that's exactly what I did. I came back into town. I tried every allergy medication on the market until I figured out which one worked. And then I went back out. And when I went back out then, it was a nice peaceful sit. It was fun. It was enjoyable.
So that's why your stomach was coming inside out at my bait last year.
Probably, yeah.
I'll never forget. We got up at the tree stand.
Talk about being too dumb to quit.
I'm sitting there, and we hadn't been in the tree stand for 10 minutes, and I hear grrr. And I turn around, and I'm looking, I'm like, what in the world is that sound? That's not right. And James is over there wide-eyed like, oh no. And I said, is that you? And I'm messed up, man. I said, well, you're about to be a lot worse. And I said, you need to go back out to the road. And he's, I don't know, or back out to the main trail. And he, I don't know. I'm going to try to stick it out.
Mm-hmm.
And another half hour, and every 5 minutes, and I can hear his stomach carrying on. And he stuck it out, and we killed a big bear that night.
Do you remember what I told you? I think it was the second time you said, man, if you need to, go back to the truck. It's right up the trail. You just go up and come back in. You remember what I told you? I will crap my pants before I get out of this tree stand.
I remember now. Yeah.
Oh boy, that would have been a very uncomfortable walk out.
I am not getting out of this tree stand.
I think I responded with something to the effect of "Not in my tree stand."
Please don't. Yeah. And I didn't. That night ended very nicely. But,
yeah.
But
you even did a heavy pack out and didn't have any issues.
Yeah. I mean, that had to have been what? 100-pound packs, 80-pound packs, somewhere in there.
We had pushing 100 pounds a piece with that bear, and
we had all of our gear, and a whole bear, split between the two of us.
Yeah, exactly.
Hide and all.
I've started going into the bait with less gear.
I was going to say,
too.
Part of the reason I keep it simple is for that reason.
I used to carry like a 30-pound pack just because it was all the stuff that I kept in my bag.
Right.
And it's like,
you're like, well, I want to be comfortable. And
I don't need my 10 by 52 binos.
Yeah.
I just like they can stay in the truck. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't need a box of 45 and a box of 45-70 in a backpack.
You hope you don't.
I used to be there. Yeah. Well, that's a good point, is how much ammo to have. And this is a great way to... Oh, no, sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So on my chest rig, I have 5 ammo round slots on there also.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to put 5, 40, 70 ammo.
They're all going to fall out.
No, they're not. They're very nice. Very nice.
Dude, I have run all kinds of ammo retainers that are
this
exposed.
Is the advantage to these ammo retainers is I can pull the Velcro off the outside if it doesn't work and put it on the inside of the chest rig.
I was going to say all of my ammo retainers are inside zippers now.
I wanted to try it on the outside because they look really nice and they look like they'll really work.
Yep.
If I'm wrong, I'll put them on the inside. But if not, and then I'll buy the one that's enclosed.
Right.
They've got like a flip down one.
Yeah,
That goes
for
with
me,
it,
for my rifle, if I'm carrying in a rifle, usually I'll have a 10-round ammo wallet in my bag somewhere.
Right.
And I've got, if it's a a normal Magnum hunting rifle, then I've got 3 in the magazine and 1 in the chamber, and that's all I'm going to need at any one given time. And then I've got 10 extras in my bag somewhere. That's more than enough for what you're going to need to bear bait.
Yep.
If you're carrying a handgun, 1 magazine is fine. I would recommend if you've got a semi-automatic,
don't
keep an extra. No, you're fine. We don't need to hash that out again.
I'm proud of you.
Keep an extra magazine in your bag.
Yeah.
Because in the event that you do have some kind of a holster that does expose your mag release and you have a malfunction where you drop your mag on the trail and you don't realize it yet, that's something that you need to have an extra one of. And I am extremely aware of my equipment. I'm always checking my magazine on my handgun. I'm always making sure that the bolt is closed on my rifle. If I have a rifle, that the bolt doesn't lock shut. On this Weatherby Mark V, it does lock shut when it's on safe, so you don't have to worry about that. But if you're running a rifle with like a Remington Model 700 style of safety, and you're walking in and that bolt comes open and you lose a round, you need to be aware of that and be checking your equipment as you go.
Now, I'm gonna plug in one thing for the gear and the tree stand, and then we're going to continue with this, and because that was a wonderful transition you were about to do. So
not anymore.
I wanted to. How do you like it?
I like it fine.
So one thing I was going to say that people should bring into their tree stand that I think gets neglected is a first aid kit or trauma kit. And I know I harp on this all of the time, but it's because so many people ignore it, and it's so important. One thing to remember is it might not feel like it to people who have done it for a while, but you are walking into a dangerous situation, technically speaking. Now, you can do this for
there's
30,
no technical about it.
Why do you think I do it?
There are people that have done this for 30, 40 years and never had a negative encounter, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But there's always the chance you might get a little nicked up, a little bit up, or anything like that.
So if you're bit by a bear, it's more than a little.
Well,
sorry, I just
point of phrase.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
But the other aspect to that is you're also just out in the elements. You are walking through unstable terrain in a lot of places, whether it be logs that are maybe underneath a layer of grass. They've been laying there for a while. You don't see them. Sprain your ankle, right? You're climbing into a tree stand, and anything can happen. You can get your backpack caught on a branch while you're climbing up and fall. You can do a lot of things can happen. Some guys wear harnesses, some guys don't. If you're one of the guys that don't, then maybe make sure that if you do fall and happen to break a bone or something like that, you've at least got a trauma kit to kind of patch yourself up while you get yourself back to your truck.
And an inReach.
That's another good one. I bring an inReach pretty much everywhere I go.
I forgot to bring that up, but most guys view an inReach as a mountain hunting tool, or when you're on extended day hunts. Multiple day hunts, multi-day excursions. They think an inReach is great for that. And it is. And that's how they came about for the most part, is for situations like that, for expeditions. However, most bear baits are not in an area with cell service, or at least good cell service. And if you do take a tumble out of a tree stand and you're laying there with a broken leg, you're not walking out of there.
Yeah, 20 yards from a barrel full of food that has bears sitting on it.
Right. And at that point, you make all the noise in the world. Make some noise and keep making noise until help arrives. But having an inReach on your person, because if you fall 15 feet out of your tree stand or 20 feet out of a tree stand and your inReach is sitting up there in your backpack, you're crawling out that half mile back to the trail, or back to your four-wheeler, or back to your pickup, whatever you got going on. But you are a long way and a dangerous way from help. And now you're an injured object crawling through the woods, moaning and groaning at a bear bait.
Yeah.
And you can do the math there, but it's not a good situation. So have an inReach in your pants pocket or in a jacket pocket, preferably in your pants, because you're not going to be taking your pants off. Right. Don't put it in your jacket that you take off and then you fall out of your tree stand and your jacket's hanging up there in the tree. Make a conscious effort to always have your inReach in your pants pocket at all times.
Or the chest rig.
Or the chest rig.
Or the chest rig. Yeah. If you leave it on the whole time.
Right, which that's my plan for
If you hang it in the tree and you're not going to have it on while you're sitting there and you fall out, it doesn't do you any good sitting 20 feet up in the tree.
And the exact same thing goes for the trauma kit. I mean, you want to make sure that you have one that is correct for that situation. You want to make sure that you have one that has the items you need. So many of these kits, and the reason I harp on this all the time is because so many of these kits are completely inadequate in an actual trauma situation.
If you run a stick through your arm or through your hand or through your leg,
30 Band-Aids isn't going to help you.
You need a tourniquet. You need a tourniquet. Now also, I was going to mention one more thing about communication to do with in-reaches, and that is let people know if you have a close friend that can come out to help you in the event that you can't radio back, if you will, for help, right? Let somebody know that you're going to be out and when you expect to be back, so that if you can't call for help, that they'll know to come look for you after X hours.
Well, and that's one reason I highly recommend everybody go with Ryan Lamper's the Stealthy Hunter trauma kit, is because it does have the things you need in it. It's the most impressive one I've seen on the market. And I'm going to say that as many times as it takes. He's got a tourniquet
in there, right?
It's got a tourniquet. It's got large triangle bandages that you can use either to wrap yourself up after, getting gnawed on, or you can use it for
yes.
He does have quick clot.
Nice.
You can use that triangle bandage to kind of, get your arm. If you got a busted wing, you can kind of get it a little closer to your body. Make sure it's not just flopping around. It even has a SAM splint in there, which is really neat that they fit that in there. And the whole thing weighs less than a pound.
Yeah.
So,
so it's called the Backcountry Medical Bag.
Backcountry Medical Bag. Okay.
It now comes in a blood red kit sack, so you can bleed all over it, and it doesn't matter.
That's forward thinking right there.
It says new blood red kit sacks.
I'm going to mention one more thing that somebody told me years ago, and I haven't even thought about it until now. Wire cutters.
Oh yeah.
To have in your bag, and here's why. It's not for working at the bait. It's for a safety item. And most people probably wouldn't guess this, but there are instances of people running a broadhead through their arm or through their leg and sticking themselves with an arrow. And if you run a broadhead through your arm, the likelihood of you being able to unscrew that broadhead and then pull the arrow shaft back out with one hand is very unlikely. Those broadheads are probably on there pretty tight if you did it right? And you need to be able to cut that arrow to pull that shaft out of there. Or to cut the broadhead end off and then cut the rest of the arrow off and then even leave it in there if you're going to leave it in there, right? Either way, having a way to cut your arrow off if the worst happens, that's not the worst. I guess the worst would be getting attacked by a bear. But having a way to cut that arrow if a accident like that does happen, I know it's far out in left field, but it sure would be a bummer to have that happen and then have to walk out with a 32-inch arrow hanging out of your arm that you can't cut or get the broadhead off of to pull out. So it's just something that I just thought of that I figured I would bring up.
Yeah, I usually have a pair of linemen's there for working at the bait, but I hadn't even thought about that aspect.
Yeah. So for those who have now stopped the podcast to go look up the Backcountry Medical Bag and think about buying it, make sure you use the discount code, the Northern Hunter Podcast. Just thought I'd throw that in there.
It's the Northern Hunter.
That's what I said.
No caps.
No, I said podcast, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
The Northern Hunter. That's right.
No caps, no spaces.
Get yourself a little discount on that.
I was actually just going to transition into our last thing here, and that is what gun to bring to the bait.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know we've mentioned Mariah bringing his 4570, James bringing a 4570, and I'll have that 338 RPM. We definitely tend to err on the side of bigger is better.
Absolutely.
If you can shoot a 338, then shoot your 338. If all you can shoot is a 30-06, shoot 30-06. If all you can shoot is a 270, shoot a 270. It's not hard to kill bears at 15 yards.
No.
With a rifle. And plenty of guys do it with a 243.
Yeah.
Might not be ideal, might not be your first choice, because you also have to consider there is the off chance that you'll have to stop one. And a 243 is not your first choice in a stopping cartridge. However, if it's all you got and all you're comfortable with, don't not bear bait because all you've got to 270 or a 6.5 Creedmoor.
Yeah.
It will work. Use a good controlled expansion bullet. On that note, Hammer Bullets has a lot of different bullet options for any caliber that you may have. We recommend those.
Mhm.
They expand very quickly, shedding those petals within the first several inches after impact. And then that shank will drive deep and often punch out the other side,
Yep.
leaving a good blood trail on an animal that tends not to bleed very much. If you can get 2 holes in a bear, that's better than 1.
And for the guys that like to shoot the old hard cast bullets, when
Yeah.
those petals shear off, it creates a nice flat front on that shank. And
Yeah.
as it's pushing through, it does create more disruption
Yeah.
and coming through.
Very similar to what a hard
Very-
cast does.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so,
Right.
kind of along those lines, though, if somebody's in the market for a new rifle for bear season or anything like that, some of the things I would take into consideration is that, like you said, you don't need all the gun in the world,
Right.
because you are very close. It's a very
Yeah.
close range
Mhm.
situation.
Yeah.
The 2 things I like to focus on for a bait gun is that frontal diameter of the bullet is very important to me.
Yeah.
I like a wider bullet, even sacrificing a lot of velocity. Like you'd mentioned, I shoot 45-70 for the bait now.
Sure.
That is after years of carrying my 300 Win Mag in. And the reason for that is it's just you're not very far away. So you don't need that magnum velocity that's going to get the lethality of that round out to 500, 600 yards, right?
Right.
You're at 20.
Right. It doesn't matter.
But having a wider bullet does give you a lot better, I guess the proper term you could use is smack once it's hit. And I have really moved towards that fatter, slower moving bullet.
It's that amount of displacement
right.
from the increased frontal diameter.
Because you got to think, even if you're shooting a 45-70 and some of these really heavy bullets coming out of there are actually very slow.
1,800, 1,900 feet a second.
Sometimes
yeah.
slower than that.
Yeah, they're pretty slow.
But if you're shooting, for the 45-70, I like that dancing around the 300 grain mark. It gives you still have that bullet width, but you get a little bit of added velocity to it. You got to think at 20 yards, your bullet's still going whatever that is. So if you're shooting a bullet that's only good to 1,800 feet per second, but it's coming out of the pipe at 2,000,
You're
it's still going to be going 1,800 feet per
you're
second
fine.
at the barrel.
Totally fine.
So, but you get that wider bullet that's going to cause a little bit more displacement.
Right.
And again, like we've talked about, a fatter, slower moving bullet doesn't cause that jelloing of the meat. It doesn't cause the bloodshot that a lot of people think it does.
Yeah.
A lot of people think, like Mo and I both have relatives that hunt deer in Ohio. Ohio has restrictions on what you can hunt with. It's 12 gauge slug or straight walled cartridges. And a lot of people use 45-70 to shoot deer. It doesn't bloodshot them that bad, as long as you don't hit the
Right.
shoulder bone or anything like that.
Right.
But there's a lot of great options that provide a wider bullet, sacrificing some of that velocity, such as the 45-70, or honestly, there's some other options like the 350 Legend, 450 Bushmaster,
I was going
things
to
like
mention
that.
350 Legend.
Right.
Yeah, those are all great options to get you a wider bullet that's heavier, but your impact velocity is still going to be plenty high to get that bullet to expand and do what it's properly supposed to do. The other thing I like to focus on is a platform that I can get rapid shots off if I need to. Bolt action rifles are fine. Just make sure you're proficient with it.
Yeah.
You got to make sure you're going and practicing at the range. The lower that bolt lift has to be, the better. That's like you said with the Weatherby RPM shooting out of that Mark V. That's a 54-degree bolt lift.
Yeah.
That's the smallest one on the market, unless you're doing like a straight pull blazer or something like that. But
which is not a bear bait rifle.
which is, I think Sean would argue with you about that one. But
Well, depends on how rich you are, probably.
oh yeah, I mean, if you got $8,000 to spend on a bear bait rifle, I'd probably buy something other than that. But,
And I wouldn't be walking into my bear baits. I'd be flying.
yeah,
No kidding. Yeah.
But the thing is, you got to make sure, for a long time I did use a Remington 700 action.
Yep.
And that 90-degree bolt throw or bolt lift is a lot.
Yep.
And you want to make sure you're practicing with it and you're proficient with it, because on the off chance that you do end up having to rapid fire at a bear that's not too happy that you're walking in there.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you're good. Tikas have a 60-degree bolt lift, I believe, so they're a good option. But I mean, the Weatherbys, you can't beat that 54-degree, man.
Yeah.
I
was going to say 3 things along the gun line. One thing is familiarity.
Mhm.
Familiarity trumps all else. assuming that you have an adequate caliber. I would say, 270, 308 is definitely 25-06. That's kind of the lighter end of what a lot of guys want to shoot.
Mm-hmm.
Most guys will shoot their moose or bear rifle, moose or, caribou. If you have a rifle that you hunt anything else in Alaska with, you're fine at a bear bait. It's fine. Whether it's 25-06 or a 308 or a 708, they all work. Number two is bears are not hard penetration mediums.
Oh yeah,
to shoot into.
They're
relatively speaking, they're pretty soft. A bullet placed in the ribs of a bear is going to kill it. 10 times out of 10. Pick a good bullet. If you don't have the ability to reload hammer bullets, and you don't have the ability to buy from one of these custom factory loads like Hendershots or Unknown Munitions or something like that, if you're just shooting factory ammo, at least pick something relatively controlled expanding. I wouldn't recommend a burger bullet, although it probably would work at a bear bait.
At a bear bait, yeah.
It's going to work. And that's the thing. Like, this is the easiest place to shoot something.
Yeah, it really is.
Really, anything put in the vitals is going to work. Even a match bullet will work, right? You just need it to expand in the lungs, and it's going to be a dead bear. As long as you're not shooting Full Metal Jacket, Spitzer Point FMJs, you'll be fine. And even those have killed bears.
They have.
Like we said, velocity is not what you need. It's shot placement. It doesn't matter if you're shooting a super whopper banger cartridge. You don't need that at a bear bait.
After I shoot a bear with the 45-70, I really want to try to shoot one with my grandpa's 30-30 this year.
Yeah,
absolutely. For that.
Yeah. But shooting any rifle that you're comfortable with and familiar with and can cycle under pressure. Like I said, bears are not hard to kill. Put the bullet in the right spot. Even if they are charging one well-placed bullet from any reasonably sized rifle cartridge will deter that bear. 9 times out of 10, you're going to be just fine if you can hit it. And that leads me to my third point. In the event that you do run into an aggressive bear that is coming in for a charge, do not fire a warning shot with your rifle. Absolutely do not fire a warning shot.
Yeah.
We already mentioned you're in a compressed environment. You're in 30 yards or less most of the time, usually under 20. If you have eyes on a bear, he's already too close if he's being aggressive.
Yeah.
Okay? You need to exercise caution, back away, don't turn your back to the bear, and have that gun on your shoulder ready to shoot if he decides to follow through with a charge. And when he decides to come in and charge in towards you, you need to be able to put one shot where it counts one time. Doesn't matter how many times you can shoot fast if you can't put the first one where it counts, because you might only have time for one shot. I've used bolt actions at baits for the majority of my time. I had a 45-70 at one point that I used. I never shot anything with it. A lever action is a great option for something like that. And that's a good option if you get a shot at a charging bear, or even at a bear at the bait, if they don't drop right away and you have visual on them for a little bit as they're trying to get away, you can get a quick follow-up shot on them if you need to. Most of the time you don't. Most of the time they're going to be gone before you can even get a follow-up shot. But understand that shot number one is always the one that's going to matter. And don't put shot number one into the dirt as a warning.
Right.
Because if he decides to charge as soon as you fire off a warning shot, you're screwed. And he's going to be on you before you even have time to get a second shot off.
Well, and one thing with the lever guns too is the biggest drawback you hear everybody say, "Oh, well, you don't want to hunt with a lever action," is the accuracy issue, right? Because clearly with the addition of multiple moving parts and things like that, and there's a lot more difference shot to shot on the exact placement of the bolt and things like that.
Sure,
you're going to end up with a little bit less accuracy at range.
Yeah.
They're not just a plain fact, right?
They're not precision weapons, though. That's not what they're made to do. Yeah.
But again, fall back to the whole velocity thing, why you don't need a ton of velocity.
Right.
You also don't need a rifle that's accurate out to 500, 600 yards.
Yeah.
Because you're at 20 yards or less. At longest, 100 yards, which lever guns are perfectly accurate at 100 yards as long as you have the right load and you have the right everything set up for that.
Yeah.
And you practice.
Yeah.
But the ability, and that's one thing I like about it, is that ability to have the quick follow-up shots and the simplistic movement of it. You're not
absolutely
you're not trying to work a bolt to go up, back, forward, down again, which you can be fast with, and I'm very fast at. I mean, I've practiced that more often than I care to admit, more hours than I care to admit with all of my rifles. But the lever actions are just faster.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's no arguing that the functionality of a lever gun at a bear bait is to your advantage. It absolutely is.
But it depends if you're familiar with it.
Right.
And it depends if you're comfortable with the cartridge, because similar to handguns, you know, we talked about handgun defense.
Yeah.
You don't want to roll in there with a 500 Smith & Wesson if
that you never shoot.
Can't handle it, right? You shouldn't be rolling in there with a 44 if you can't handle it.
Yeah.
Like you said, with that first shot, you got to make sure you're comfortable.
Yeah.
So that same goes for your bait gun.
Yeah.
For your rifle.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, I was shooting the 45-70 at the range the other day. I had worked up a load, as I mentioned earlier, and I got a load I liked, and I loaded a bunch of them up. And what I discovered with that rifle, because I hadn't really put that rifle at much range before, and I got it sighted in because I'd only carried it for short stuff, but you know, I knew it was good at 20 yards, and that's all I'd used it at. I really wanted to shoot it some more, so I shot it at. Been shooting it at 50, and I dialed the scope in a little bit more at 50. I started shooting it at 100, and I shot it at 20 to make sure it was within, and I mean, it was within an inch in height on all three of those. And then once I got it sighted in, like I was getting at 100 yards, I think I got within, you know, my margin of error and a ridiculously strong trigger that I need to adjust. I mean, I told you on the phone the other day, 1.5 MOA group at 100.
Yeah.
Which is, for the lever gun like it is
an inch and a half group out of a 45-70 is great.
And, and it wasn't
fine.
And I'm going to point out one reason why I think you might be surprised by that is because, and you've told this story before on the podcast, is you used to shoot the very heavy bullets, you know, 400 plus grains. And those 400 plus grain bullets are really not good past 30, 40 yards. They slow down too much. They're just, they have a huge arch in their trajectory.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's one reason, all the way back to, I mean, heck, the early 2010s when I had my first 45-70. That's when I started moving towards that lower 300 grain and dancing around that grainage, is because it's amazing. Not only the accuracy you can get, but the velocity and it flattens out that trajectory a ton.
Yeah.
I mean, a ton.
And the other thing I was going to mention, I think if I adjusted the trigger a little bit on it, I would actually it wasn't quite 1.5 MOA. It was probably 2-inch group at 100.
That's still great for a lever gun.
And looked at it when you took out the shots that I know I messed up on. And I started shooting after I did that. I took 5 shots at the plates, 320 yards at the end of the range, and I didn't have a spotting scope or anything. I just had my binos and the scope on my rifle, and a 36-inch holdover at 320 yards with a X zoom and a pair of 10X binos. I was able to ring the plate twice out of 5 shots by myself without a spotting scope, which I was pretty happy with.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's
especially
pretty
with 45-70.
Yeah.
You're right.
I mean, you're basically halfway there to a Great Plains buffalo sniper.
There you go.
Yeah, well, they were shooting like a 26-inch barrel rolling block sharps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great point. Talk about that scope you have on that thing.
So I have a VX3 1.5 to 5.
Okay.
It's a Leupold, obviously. And it's great because at 1.5 power, there's almost no zoom. So when you're in a bait or in any kind of situation you might have an encounter, there's not like a 4X zoom at 20 yards could end your life if you have a bear encounter. Right.
Yeah.
So 1.5 is almost as good as 1. Not quite as good, but and there's some scopes. There's some scopes now that you can get that are a 1 to 8.
Yeah. I was looking at one of those.
That true 1 power is pretty nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does Leupold make one of those yet?
Yep.
Yeah, Leupold does, and Aim Point.
I think Night Force makes one too. Don't
Trigicon, Night Force.
Yeah.
EOTech has.
Yeah, EOTech. That's what I was thinking of. I was looking at one of theirs, but for what I'm doing right now, it works great.
Well, and I was going to point that out. One important aspect, in addition to just your rifle, is the optics you planning to use when you walk in. Those 1 power, 1.5, even 2 power is okay. 2.5 will actually do the job fine, but it's a little high for what I would want. But it's really all about that quick target acquisition. You want to be able to get on the gun and get that acquisition really, really quickly. And that's one reason for my 45-70, I went with straight irons. And well, technically I have a ghost ring. So but
I went away from the ghost ring.
I don't like ghost rings, and I think I've said that on the show before, but I'm giving this one a try, just to try it out again. Because it's been like a decade since I used ghost rings. So I learned how to shoot on all sorts of iron sights. I didn't use an optic for a long time. And so I'm kind of going back to that, trying to figure out what it is that I like. Yeah. And so I'm trying that ghost ring out this year. I'll see how I like it. But really having a low powered scope is where you want to be. Right. You don't need to worry so much. You hear so many people talk about the objective size, right? And you want the light gathering, you want this, you want that. I'm here to tell you, with a lot of these modern day scopes and the modern day coatings, you don't really need to have the huge objectives. Yeah. Especially in Alaska, we have daylight pretty late into the evening. In June, we have daylight pretty much 24 hours a day. And it's just not as vital as having that low magnification. I think if you're going to focus on one item, whether it's low magnification or a large bell at the end of that scope, focus on the lower magnification.
Yeah, I agree.
I had a situation, this was last year actually, and it was the only time I brought this rifle into the bait. I'm trying to remember why I grabbed my 300 for that one, rather than, I don't remember now, but my 300 has a 4-power base. It's a 4 to 16 on top of that thing, which is great for just about all other forms of hunting I do.
Right, 50 yards or further, it's awesome.
Right, and this particular evening, I think I've told the story on the show before, but my wife ended up having a bear run at her, and again, didn't get super close, but it was running, so I jumped in front of her, and I went to raise my rifle up, and the target acquisition with a 4-power, I'm here to tell you, is not fast enough. I ended up rolling my gun on its side and aiming down the barrel.
Right.
And then I yelled at the bear just to see if it would turn, because I didn't think it was one we wanted to take home with us that night. And luckily it did turn and it went away. So again, you don't have to end every single encounter in a gunfight, but yeah, a 4-power is just too much to carry in the woods.
I'll say one more thing about the ghost ring, and I completely agree with you on that. I was shooting the ghost ring for a while, for several years, carrying that thing. I shot it, and I was trying to hit a paper plate at 100 yards, and I couldn't, 5 shots, and maybe one was hitting that paper plate. Right. There's just too much room in there. There's nowhere to make that decision, like where I'm holding it, right?
Yeah.
To get repeatability. And I didn't like that. That really bothered me. I need to have some distance with any rifle I'm carrying.
Yeah.
And so, I did kill a bear with it at one point, and it was we were tracking a wounded bear somebody else had shot in the neck with some bird shot, which is just, I think I've talked about it before on here. I don't remember, but just don't do that.
Yeah.
If you use a shotgun, slug or buckshot at the minimum. But anyhow.
Yeah.
So Dalton called me one day because I told him, hey, I'm looking for the scope, and he found a good deal on one. I went and picked it up, and I love it. It's awesome.
Yep.
But
a 24 millimeter objective is not ideal, but it'll work.
I think it's actually
32,
20, and it's
yeah.
great for what it is. It's awesome.
You can still see the bear at the barrel even at 2 a.m.
And honestly, I like the fact that it's so small.
Yeah,
because it's just it's compact, it's out of the way. It's
low
not like
profile.
having a 4 to 14 or a 4 to 16 or even a 4 to 10 on.
And
top
for anybody
of
that's wondering what it looks like, there is a picture on our Instagram, the company Instagram of your rifle setup there. So,
right. Now I wanted to weigh in just real quick on the scope thing. I've been guiding the last 3 years with a 2.5 to 8 power VX3 Leupold on 375s that I've had. And I've shot some bears up close, point blank in the brush with 2.5 power. That does work okay. In an ideal world, I will have at some point a true 1 power, but that 2.5 power is fine. Right now on that 338 RPM, I've got a VX5 HD because I already had it and I know it'll work. And it's a 3 to 15. Obviously, at a bear bait, I will never need any zoom on that scope. But the difference between 2.5 and 3 is not enough for me to care. And I'm going to run that 3 power VX5 on that 338 for guiding, and I'll probably use it at a bear bait. But at some point down the road, I will end up with that VX5 2 to 10. That 2 power is just a bit better. 2.5 or 3, there's really not as much of a difference for me to care about it. And the VX5 is a little better glass than the VX3 is. Right. So I went with that over the 2.5 to 8 just for the glass clarity. And it's a 30 millimeter tube, so I get a bit more light gathering. And we do a lot of shooting guiding at very low light, and having a 30 millimeter tube is advantageous.
That is true. Yeah.
And especially because I'm guiding bears even in the beginning of May, where it does get dark at night still.
I think arguably the tube size still matters quite a bit for light.
It does, but on those 1.5 to 5 with a 20 millimeter straight tube, I've used those a lot. And even at bear baits at 2 o'clock in the morning, it is no problem.
More than enough, and a lot of times, especially if you just do both eyes open, so you let your left eye gather some light.
I always shoot
both eyes open all the time. Yeah, absolutely.
I tried doing the whole close one eye thing, but I end up getting like fatigue in the eye, and then it ends up kind of blurring my other eye. Yeah, it makes it hard to shoot. So I've always shot 2 eyes open.
When I'm at the range, I'm usually one eye closed. It's just,
really? Yeah. I tried it. Can't do it.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah. I think if I had to pick one scope for a bear bait rifle, it would, and for the affordability of it, it would be that 1.5 to 5 straight tube VX3 HD.
Yeah.
That's a great scope.
Yep.
Can't go wrong with it.
Yeah. You just got to make sure you can get on target quickly. You can see what you need to see. And again, with modern technology, a lot of that old superstition, if you want to call it that, on the older optics on what works and what doesn't, they've fixed so many of those problems.
Yeah, right.
So,
I'll definitely, on that 30-30, I'll definitely be running irons on that. I don't really ever want to put glass on that thing. But.
Yeah. The only thing I don't like about some irons is when you get the horseshoe shape, you have to like cover half the target in some instances to get that accurate shot when you're lining up the front and rear sights. That's kind of one reason I'm trying out the Ghost Ring again, is because it just has that real thin front post with a little, I put a little Trigicon glowing front sight on there so I can get that nice crisp dot on there.
I was just going to say that. I was going to read your mind again and say that if you are shooting irons, make sure that you have some kind of a reflective material around the peep sight or around the buckhorn.
Some reflective paint on the front.
Yeah, because you don't want to use black sights on a black bear.
Yeah, Sportsman's Warehouse has that little reflective, paint on deal that you can put on your iron sights, and that will do wonders for your iron sight gun at 2 o'clock in the morning when it's not quite dark, but light enough to shoot. And if there's a bear sitting there munching on dog food, you don't want to be able to say, "Well, I can't see it, so I can't shoot it."
Yeah.
So, and you can't exactly light it up with a light, so you got to be able to see it through your glass or through your iron sights.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Well, all right, guys. Hopefully you have appreciated this series we've been putting on for you guys about how to bear bait. This is technically the final episode of the instructional portion of it, but we will be bringing you a lot of bear baiting content throughout the season as we get forward.
Yeah.
Again, this is a pre-recorded episode, so I think this one's coming out almost a month from now.
Yeah.
But so hopefully by the time you hear us next time, we will have gotten our baits out, have some action to talk to you about. Mo and I'll keep you up to date with what's going on. Dalton is going to do what most of us wish we could do and go shoot big coastals.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, if you did and you would like to, if you did enjoy the show and you would like to support us, definitely utilizing some of our sponsor products will help us out a lot and help them out. And you want to go into that?
Yeah, I was just going to remind everybody, I know we talked about it earlier on the show, but just a quick reminder, if you like the show and you like what we're doing and you want to help support us, the best way you can do that is to go shop from our sponsors pages that we have discount codes through. And right now, those 3 are BAITM907. You can use a checkout coupon code TNHP at checkout, and you'll get a discount there. BAITM907, we don't need to say too much about that. We've talked about them a bunch through our last multiple episodes. Nasty Boar, Sow and Heat, Blueberry, Anise, Beaver Caster, all the good stuff from BAITM 907. So use TNHP in the promo code box at checkout, and that'll get you a discount there. Also from Stealthy Hunter and Stealthy Nutrition with Ryan Lamper's company for rifle covers, glassing pads, nutritional supplements. As you're hauling in bear bait and you get sore joints, some CBD supplements or turmeric for the joints will go a long ways. I live on that stuff nowadays, and it's helped me a lot. Even though I'm young, I've spent a lot of hours with heavy pack on, and it has helped my joint recovery a lot, even through my spring training. Go check out Stealthy Hunter's website and use the code The Northern Hunter at checkout, and you'll save some money from Stealthy Hunter and Stealthy Nutrition at their website. And then also check out Yukon River Knives website.
Yep.
They have some great blades that we will all be using here this spring. I've got the Hunter and the Sendero bush knife to be using. and also the ATK rifle sling knife combo. That's a great setup on your rifle, so you've always got a knife there with you. So use the code The Northern Hunter on Yukon River Knives website, and that'll help us support the show as well. And not to forget about our last two partners is Weatherby, obviously the finest rifles on the market, we believe, and we're very happy to be working with them. If you're in the market for a new rifle for this year, for either your spring baiting needs or for a fall season rifle coming up, now's the time to buy a rifle before the fall. Familiarize yourself with it. Get a hand load worked up with Hammer bullets. Most of their bullets are in stock. I actually haven't found any that aren't, that I've been looking at all. Like I said, I've worked up a hand load for my 338 RPM Weatherby Mark V, and shoots great. They're easy to load for, very easy to load for. Get great velocity out of them, and check out their website and make sure to shop your bullet needs if you're a reloader from Hammer Bullets. And also, if you do not reload, you can find Hammer Bullets factory loaded by Weatherby, Unknown Munitions, and Hendershots, to name a few. I think there are a few other guys you can look on. You can look on Hammer Bullets Instagram page and see a list of people that they supply bullets to, that they factory load.
Absolutely.
So check out our sponsors and help support the show. I will be MIA for the next couple of episodes. I'll be out guiding on the Gulf, as James said, for brown bears. I'll be back in a few weeks. So good luck.
All right. And if you do support the show and you do like what we're doing, we'd also appreciate it if you gave us a rating on whatever platform you're listening to. Share it with your friends. Leave us a comment. Leave us a, whatever you call those,
a review.
A review. That's the word. Yeah. A review. So leave us a good review. Share it with your friends. And if you have any questions or comments about what we talked about today, or maybe you want us to talk about something in the future, you go to thenorthernhunter.com. We have a nice, pretty contact button there, and you can get to us. If you want to send us a direct email, it's info@thenorthernhunter, or you can search for our socials. Just search @thenorthernhunter on either Instagram or Facebook, and we will pop up. And until next time, get out there, get after it, and good luck. See you next week.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to STEALTHYHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.